Forrest, are you ready? All right, we'll call to order the special meeting for Tonganoxie USD 464 for October 9th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Oh, shoot. Evan, do you move to, or do you vote to approve the agenda?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for joining us tonight. As I mentioned, we're a little more harried getting started here, and I apologize in advance for that, but the 5 o'clock hour is a little bit more challenging. But wanted to give you guys an opportunity to kind of present. Hopefully the board will have some questions afterwards. We intend to have an action item to pick the selection firm Monday night at our regular board meeting. But with that, thank you again for coming. We'll give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Hey, Evan, if you can hear us, I did send you an email. The materials that your board team has at their place, I put in an email. So I just want to make sure if you had questions or could follow along, you received that.
Great, thank you. I'm double checking right now.
Yep, it should just.
Yes,
Perfect.
I got it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yep, no worries. So I'll let Dr. Hubbard, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. My name is Michelle Hubbard, and I am just finishing up my first year with KASB. I spent 33 years in education, 10 of those as a superintendent. So I feel like I've worked for boards for a large part of my career. And
We're sorry.
Well, the best part of working for KASB is that we work for school boards, and so I love that part. I love continuing to be able to serve public schools in Kansas. So I'm excited to be here, and just thank you guys for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, and I'm Britton Hart. I have a little bit different path. I've not been a superintendent. And so I've had the luxury I do about 2 board meetings a week. So go about 50 some to 75 board meetings a year. So I have a really fun interaction with boards. I was telling Linda, I will see your face, I'll remember you when I'm at your board table, but if I see a convention or something, it is hard for me to keep up. One of the luxuries I have is I get to help lead our team, and so Dr. Hubbard's one of our members, but you can see on the screen, we've worked hard over the last 7 years that I've been at KSB to try to start to have people, consultants in the areas of which we serve. And so traditionally, we've had a lot of people around that Topeka area, and we've worked really hard to try to expand and look a little bit more like our state does. And so this is our team. When I say our team, this is the team that you'll utilize as well. As we screen candidates, as we bring people in front of you, these are some of the individuals that we'll use to make sure that we do a thorough background check and knowledge of each candidate. But we'll also, as we'll talk about a little bit later, we'll also, also select 2 sitting superintendents, Kansas superintendents, that also help serve candidates as well. So that way we can be as objective as possible. So as we go tonight, we want to give you a quick overview of who we are, and we want to do a quick overview of KSB, and then we're going to get in the nuts and bolts of really what you can expect as part of a search process. How many of you on the board have been through a search thus far? 1, 2, 3 of you? Okay, so they may lean on you at times about, the things that they really like, the things that maybe they didn't like so much. And so I would say we try to customize the service and customize your experience to your needs, while balancing that, hey, here's the pros and cons to all the things that we can do to help support you in this process. And so we'll kind of walk through those. Again, we kind of introduced our team. Our mission really, and I think it'll be unique to us, is that we serve school boards. We do not serve leaders, we serve school boards, and we're fortunate enough to be given that task for 283 districts out of 285. And so we take that with great honor, and we try to make sure that as we think about how we lead, serve, and advocate, we want to make sure we're giving you the opportunity to kind of navigate what that looks like for your community. Nobody knows it better than you. And so we try to facilitate conversations. We try to get people in front of you that we think would be a good mix or a good fit for you and your board team. So let's talk a little bit about the phases.
Yes, so our search process has 5 phases built in. So the first phase is really about the announcement and the timeline. So you all will have a sample timeline in front of you, and we actually did two. We did one, a search starting pretty much immediately, like next week, and that would end before Christmas. And then we did a second timeline with you that would give a little bit of space in the front, and we would end it just shortly after the first of the year. The thing that I want to reiterate about these 5 phases, we've laid out this process really nicely, and we think it works great. But at the end of the day, this is your search. This is one of the most important decisions that you make as a Board of Education, and we want it to be something you're really comfortable with. And if there are things that we edit throughout the search, like maybe you don't like the survey questions, or maybe you just want to add a couple more, we're all about that. This is your search, so I just want to be really clear about that. So that timeline is important. Also, marketing I think is extremely important, and we do have a team.
They can follow along.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes, sorry. And pages 4 through 15 is all about phase 1. There are some sample marketing materials in there that we use. We do have a team that does the marketing flyers. However, I did notice as I looked at your website and some of your communications, you guys have an exceptionally strong communications. It appears from an outsider looking in, like your website is really good. And so if you have a comms person that you would rather do that, or that we would collaborate with, that's something we can definitely do. Or if you're like, nope, we want you guys to take it, we can 100% do that too. Most of the time, I would tell you we do take it. I only mention that because we noticed your website has great, your comms person is really good at that job. Questions about phase 1? I don't want to fly through these really quickly.
We will probably allow you to see a draft before we send some of that out. I would encourage you to
100%.
connect your strategic plan, so your 4 goals that you have on your strategic plan, some of those core values that you have listed on your website. I would encourage you to include that in some of your marketing so people start to get a feel of who you are and really, to be honest, what you're looking for.
So without getting in the weeds on timeline, but before we move on, it feels like that we're still, kind of in the driver's seat in a good position timeline wise, though we've been pushing pretty hard to not get behind the 8 ball. How's it feel to you from a timeline perspective?
I think you're in the best place you can be as far as the timeline. I mean, it's really ideal to have a superintendent hired, I would personally say by January 15, January 30. So I feel like but I don't think you're too soon either. Like hiring in December is not out of character. And you've done for years.
So the dynamic, especially on election year, is to be thoughtful about board turnover. So how many people are going to turn over? We had talked about that, on a phone call. How to include those people? Do you want to include those people? How does that look? And so that probably is the dynamic as a board you need to talk about a little bit. If people are coming onto the board, I always think it's helpful to say, hey, let's do something after the first of the year. If you decide not to, how do we involve those people in December as part of that process, which that's possible as well.
Okay.
And so that's the dynamic that you as a board will want to give us guidance on. But a couple ways to do that. When you're in the October, November phase, you got time. If we were talking to you in January, we don't have time. So right now we have plenty of time to do that. Typically the first round of searches complete right around the middle of January. And so we don't see a lot of superintendencies typically that finish before Christmas, partly because that's a hectic time of year. Also something to think about as you think about that dynamic is if you're going to recruit will probably attract current soups versus brand new. And so as you think about that, it becomes more difficult for a sitting superintendent to tell their board that we're not love anymore prior to Christmas. And so that's a dynamic, not for everybody, but dynamic for some. You get to say, hey, I love working here, but I'm going to apply for this. And in most cases that works out fine, but in some cases they're like, hey, we're not as in love as I thought we were either, so we're looking. And so that dynamic can be a little bit touchy for the other board and the current superintendent. So those are all dynamics that we would talk about more in depth before we would ask you to approve a final timeline.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to phase 2, and this is about developing characteristics. I personally think after this past year, this is one of the most important parts of the process. And this is where that community input, community voice is really important in asking what are we looking for in our next superintendent. And staff voice, very important. So we do this in a couple of different ways. One would be putting out a survey. And you would put out the survey, you all would help with the questions. We have a set of questions that we use in our survey, but we would want you, if you wanted to add any specific to your districts, you would add those. The survey would go out, so anyone has a voice in this process if they choose to complete the survey. The second part of that are what we would call characteristic focus groups. We base those focus groups around a set of 4 questions, and it's really about what characteristics are we looking for, what are the strengths of our community, what's that one characteristic that sets the next superintendent apart from somebody else. So questions like that, we run those focus groups. Focus groups typically will have 6 or 7 in a day. It would be staff, it would be parents, it would be community members potentially. I've ran a student focus group, so again, we would tailor that to what you're really looking for. I will tell you, kids give great input. It's shocking sometimes what kids bring to the table in regards to, in some cases, they don't even know who the superintendent is, right? In a place like Tonganoxie, you're small enough, they know who the superintendent is likely. And so I think it's just a really great opportunity to have all those voices at the table. From those characteristics, we will build a characteristics report that will be public, and it will say, this is what we're looking for in our next superintendent. We'll bring all that feedback to you. You all will finalize as a board what that characteristics report looks like. So that's really that second phase, and really prepping for that interview process.
So much of this second phase hinges on how you gather input down the road before you seal up the search, so from community members, stakeholders, also how you align your questions, what you ask. And so this process, as Dr. Hubbard said, is probably one of the more critical pieces of this is to identify those key skills, those key characteristics that you want. And if you've been on the board, like the 3 of you said before, you know, it also gives you an opportunity as a community and a board team to kind of bring people together because you're talking about the things you value, right? And so those things I also think is a good way to start to say, here's the commonalities that we have in the team, here's what we're gonna look for.
All right, so phase 3 is the interview process. So we want to make sure, as a board, you are ready to go in this interview process. We're going to provide you a list of questions, a bank of questions. Again, whether you see this in the handbook that we gave you on pages 24 to 35. Obviously, there are a lot more questions in there than you could ever ask in an interview. So one of the things that I like to do is take that characteristics report and really find those questions that line up with what you're looking for, as well as I would meet with you as a board and we would come up with those questions together. I would ask for you all to submit questions. We'll narrow it down. I like to keep it at really no more than 21. Each of you can ask 3 questions each of the candidate in a round robin type interview. But again, this is your superintendent and you are going to have to feel like you have a great bank of information to make this decision. So we'll work through the interview questions together to make sure that you all are all comfortable in that process. We also, we represent boards and we want you to make sure legally that you are doing everything that you need to do as a board to take care of the board and to take care of the district. So through that process, we would go through some questions like, you can't ask this in the boardroom, like it's just not a legal question. So we would make sure that you're prepared for that. And then additionally, if you want some feedback from your stakeholders, for example, if you choose to do community groups and you want some feedback or you want some feedback from your teacher groups, we can facilitate that as well. There's a couple samples in there. Again, your process, we would want you all to decide what you want as part of that process.
Phase 3, to me, is the fun part. That's when you get to meet the people, right? You can tell I'm a little dirty about it. I'm a people person. And so that's the best part, in my opinion. Some of the other parts are important, but not as fun, right? And so during that time, there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to ask you to say, you know, how much involvement do you want from people away from the board table at that point? We've already asked a lot, but tons of options there. The other piece we probably won't spend a ton of time on tonight, but how do you want to have the interview process maintained? Do you want a closed process, just with the board, just with the candidates? There's some pros to that, some cons to that. Do you want it wide open where your community, your staff gets to meet these individuals as they come through each day? So lots of dynamics there. We've done searches that are closed, that at times can attract some more candidates because of the confidentiality that is involved with that, the inherent lack or not need to tell everybody, if I'm leaving a community, I don't have to tell everybody until I get that position. So there's lots of factors there that could be positive to drive up or to build or to have more candidates. On the flip side, most of our boards in Kansas are rural. And when you have a rural community, transparency, communication to your neighbor is really pretty important. And so we know that and understand that, and so the transparency of having it open is just as important. You'll know that pulse way better than us. And so we'll help you through that process, and we'll try to ask the good questions to make you think, Linda, hey, is this what's best for us? Or Justin, is this what's best for our team? And so that's really gonna be the fun part. It'd also be a long week for you, depending on how many candidates you have.
I would just,
No, go ahead.
I would just add one more thing, and that is, I tell people, and now mostly boards, that the candidate you want has a really good job right now. And so I don't want,
The candidate I want, I hope isn't even looking right now. I wanna go get them.
Tell me more.
The best recruiters I've ever worked with, they went and found the person that wasn't even looking, but they were really good. So, I mean, you're right. They either have a really good job or they're not even looking, and we convince them to look.
Yeah, the
So,
one you want has a really good job right now, right?
Yep.
And so that is one thing a closed search does. It will increase your pool. That's just the way it is. But at the same time, if community input is really important to you, I mean, you can have a balance of those things. I did both searches last year. I did a couple that were open and one, and it was a rural community, and they were like, we want the best candidate to apply for this job, and we don't want them to feel like they can't because it's gonna be out there. So that's something you all really need to talk about.
so even in an open search, though, I would assume it's closed up to a point, right? I mean, you would at least get to the point where you've come up with 2 or 3 finalists before you would open it up to where everybody would know.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
but-
correct.
Yes, but in some, they don't even share the finalists in some searches.
Yeah,
So a pure closed would be, we cut the ribbon and this is our new superintendent. Welcome, Mrs. Smith to the district.
Yes.
That's kind of the definition of a closed search.
A fully closed search, yes.
Okay.
That's
But-
not as typical in Kansas, partly because my reference to, the transparency, the people we serve, right? We
Mhm.
serve our communities.
Mhm.
I think typically once we get to that final week, if we're fortunate enough to have, a pool of 15 candidates, more than likely, we're just gonna be notifying 4 and 5 people. You're gonna get to talk about every one of the candidates, you're gonna get to really dig into each one, you're gonna select 3 to 5. And then we also just will announce, or we'll advise you to announce one at a time. So Monday's Justin, Tuesday's Chris. Stephanie finds out she's going on Wednesday, and guess what? I'm not willing to put my name out there yet. We're not gonna release her till Wednesday. She may call me and say, hey, I've decided to pull my name. That's best for you folks as a board, it's also best for that candidate. And so,
That's almost a hybrid of the closed versus open.
yeah.
Okay.
And you've had success both ways.
Yes.
Yep. All right, good questions, thank you.
All right, so phase 4, the negotiations and hiring process are really important here. I will tell you, sometimes the negotiation phase needs to go really fast because, again, some of these great candidates might have another offer on the table, right? Also, I personally tell candidates, and I think this is one place we are very different than our competitors. I am not gonna just try to make sure you have 15 candidates in the pool, just to say, oh, we brought you 15 candidates. Because I only want candidates in the pool that are highly qualified and that want to work here and are going to say yes. Because the worst thing you want to do is get through this whole process, start negotiating, and then you're like, I'm not gonna take this job. Because it's deflating for you as a board who have done a lot of hours of interviewing, and it wasted a lot of people's time. So I tell candidates, don't apply for this job unless you are willing to take the job. So you should have done your homework ahead ahead of time to know that you want to be the next superintendent in the Tohono O'odham School District. So that is one place we're a little bit different, because I do feel like our competitors are going to just try to beef up the pool to say, we brought you all of these candidates. Right now, in a typical search in Kansas, we're going to get about 8 candidates, right?
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah,
what
we
you
are.
would say?
Yep.
I will tell you, in the one fully closed search I didn't have 8, but I had all sitting superintendents, which was really unique. We don't typically get that. We'll get a lot of that. I'm ready to move to that next step, but in that particular search, we could have interviewed the whole pool. But in the Atchison search, we had a great outcome, but not sitting superintendents. The 3 finalists that were very public, not sitting superintendents. So again, it takes you back to that phase 2 and that characteristics piece. What are you looking for? We really need to define what we're looking for and who that person is. So, really important part.
So it seems like deciding on that closed versus open or some hybrid thereof needs to happen early. And you will likely be asked that question of every candidate, so that's probably something we need to think about sooner than later, is where's our head at on
Yeah,
that.
one thing I think this is a great time to insert it is, we worked with Lawrence last year, and we developed a kind of a bi-weekly communication process that worked really good. If you're familiar with Lawrence at all, the high need for transparency is critical, which I'm sure is similar for you folks. But sending every 2-week correspondence to the board that you can share with your community. And so from the get-go, we start to share, hey, what's next steps for the search process? What's next steps for you as a community member, maybe, or teacher? What does the process look like moving forward? So if you decide to do a closed search, I think what we want to do is we want to educate our community about what it looks like, so they know things are going to happen versus going, hey, board president, I'm getting phone calls because I didn't understand you guys are going to do this. So we can help you communicate that, especially with your comms team. But that worked really good in Lawrence to make sure that the community had a clear understanding of where we were at in the process, how they could be involved, what was going to be the final action.
And that note was very similar to probably what you get in a Friday note or a superintendent's note. We did it weekly. So with Lawrence, we did the Friday notes. And so we would give them sort of details in that note that they might not share also. I mean, obviously it's an open, it's an open records request. If they want it, they're going to get it, right? But there are some things that you might not share the whole note, but at the bottom of that note, I would typically put this would be some good things to share with your community. The focus groups are coming. You can look for the marketing in these places.
So effectively, you can be highly transparent on the process, but without naming names.
Yes.
Last sidebar here that I want you to consider, because you're going to hear this, is my experience. It's only about 7 years. We do about 30 plus searches a year. State average is 45, 46. So we do about 75-ish%. I would say nearly 100%, not quite, but nearly 100% are somebody that's connected to your region. They know something about your region. When you think about Nebraska, we can get in the car tonight about 90 miles, pretty close. Maybe I grew up around here, but I've been working there. Missouri, a little bit less, 45 miles. Iowa, etc. You guys know that. But typically, almost 100% of the time, they've had some connection to the region. Because we'll have boards all the time say, hey, we want to do a national search. Well, tell me more about what that actually looks like. If a person from California wants to come work here at Convenacy, they better have a good connection to here. Because otherwise they're just job hunting, right? And so gotta be sensitive to that, but almost 100% of the time they have some connection to the region. Maybe they grew up around Kansas City area. It's a great place that they've been connected with. And so that's a pretty good data that we would have that would tell you that, just like Lauren, when he came, he's got a connection to the region, grew up in Hanover. And so those things are important to you because we know they're important to the candidate.
And I just think it really brings longevity with the superintendent when they are connected to the space. And then this final phase, which we are just finishing up goals and expectations right now of the superintendents that were hired this last year. I will tell you, I think this is so critical for the success of the board and for the success of the new superintendent. And this people as it does to one person. And so I just think those conversations are so great. And then also some goal setting for the year so that we have really clear expectations. We have clear goals of what the board is headed for in 25, 26, and what that new superintendent would actually 26, 27.
Yep.
So, just having that place, and then where we are with our strategic plan, what does that look like? Are we 3 years in? Do we need to start thinking about our next one? All of those kinds of conversations, and superintendent evaluation also very important in that process, and we would help coach you through, because it looks differently than it does now. With your current superintendent, you're gonna have more evaluation in the first 2 years of that superintendency, so.
This is the part where by selecting the right person, they're gonna know that you have a little bit of declining control. But they also know that you have a housing development going in. They know that you have a really tight-knit community that loves to be involved with the day-to-day, the school stuff. They're gonna know that you're doing some updates at the elementary building facilities. So if they've never done that, that's gonna be a question you're gonna ask, what's that look like? They're also gonna spend some time with your current soup and your current assistant soup to make that transition really smooth. And so asking those specific questions and then refining that so that you have a fresh start, you have a really good angle at having success. I always compare it, whether it's fair or not, to a marriage. You kind of go through the dating phase here, but then when you sign the dotted line, you say, hey, we love each other, we're gonna get married. There's certain things we find out about each other that we're like, ooh, I didn't know you left your Q-tips out on the counter. If my wife listens, she's giggling because she says, why do you leave those there? I'm not sure, the trash can is right there, but those are things that we want to try the best we can to get you enough time with the candidates, get you enough time with the individual that you feel that is way back in the day, which we've kind of faded away from this in COVID, is you would have 3 to 5 interviews, you would narrow it down to 2, and these 2 would come in your district, they would spend a day. Oh my gosh, it was the best thing we ever did. We got away from it when we went to COVID and all the online things and just were, time. And so those kind of options really was really valuable to boards, because there's nothing better than test driving the candidate that's going through your building, sitting at the coffee shop all day. And then you're getting this feedback going, this person's dynamite, versus just the 3 hours you get to spend with them at the board table. So tons of things to think about. Our job is to be there along the way, to help you, to ask the questions, to say, Linda, have you thought about this? What do you think might be best? Ryan, what do you think? Evan online, try to give you the tools necessary to make it happen. Last part, just the stuff that we always have to talk about. In your packet, in the RFP, we have a max price. Obviously, we do that for all our searches, not just for RFPs. But the other thing you'll notice is that's our standard rate. We don't charge more, charge less. That's what we charge. We put a pencil to it. It takes us 35 hours to do a search. Just is. So if somebody comes in and wants to charge you $20,000, that just means they're making triple amount of money. Because it takes 35 man and women hours to actually do the search, on average, all our searches. So that's how we've gauged our pricing to go do that. The expenses, we just rated $1,000. They'll probably be much less than that, but it will not exceed the $7,500. So as a board team, you can say, this is our max price. That also includes everything that will take place in that last phase 5, the transition as well. You're familiar with KSB, or I think you probably are enough that we have a legal team, a comms team, and an advocacy team. Those are all at your disposal, if you will, our disposal along the process. There's many times where we need those. There's been districts that have not used our search process, and they use the legal team during the search process because they find that there's hurdles that come out that are knocking them in the face and say, hey, we need to think about this. These are things where we have a candidate that we uncovered a resume that wasn't healthy. What do we do about that? And so that walks alongside of us, if you will, as we go. So anything that we have that comes up, again, we want you to have the best information. So.
And the communication with board, we talked about that already. With the Friday notice, that's something that, or every other Friday, that's something that you all would want. We absolutely could integrate that process.
What questions do you have for us?
Guarantee. So we identify candidate, we hire candidate. For one reason or another, doesn't pan out. A year into this, I mean, is there anything to protect our investment that we have done our work, we've identified the best for success?
Yep, yep. So we have it built in our contract, our agreement. Typically we do a 1-year guarantee. We've done 2-year guarantees as well. Now, if we do a 2-year guarantee, we would ask as part of that you would do a training every year with your board team, just so that we know that the goals are being set, that the follow through, the data is being shared, and you guys want to do that too, right? And so we can work through that. Typically we do a 1 year. We've done several 2 years. I will tell you the 100% I talked about earlier, it's not quite 100, persons that are close to your region is similar to our success rate of people we put in those chairs. So the 30-ish that we've guided you to get to that point, I feel really strong about. You've seen it in the news the last couple weeks, unfortunately, these search firms that are struggling with background checks and people not having correct information. We're human, we're gonna make mistakes too, but we've been really fortunate. Part of it is because we typically are in every community with other boards, and so if you're gonna interview a superintendent, I pick up the board president just like I would Justin, say, hey, what's Lauren like? Oh man, Lauren's great, or he's great most of the time, but. And so we have those relationships with school boards that most people don't. And to be honest, if you get a cold call, just like at your place of business, if you get a cold call from somebody that you don't have a relationship with, you're not gonna be near as candid as you are somebody that has some level of connection with you. Because I'm gonna go to Karen's board at some point. And so if Karen and I can't have some level of trust with KSB and her board, I'm not gonna get any response from her. So that's a luxury that we have and that we obviously try to pride ourselves to keep, because that's an important part of this process, is to get the best information.
The other thing too, we like to really do a pretty solid social media scrub. You just never know what people are doing online. And again, we may or may not catch it, but we sure do try. And I had a candidate this past year that on paper, great, references, solid. I found a TikTok account, I was like, it wasn't something I could rule this person out for, but I shared that with the board. And I said, I want you to look at this account, because this is what's gonna be very public the minute that you name this person the superintendent. And so, we're gonna come to you with those things, and we didn't talk a lot about this process, but when we bring you all the candidates, we're gonna sit in executive session. I'm gonna go through every candidate you have, and I'm gonna rate them a red, yellow, or a green. The green is, you should consider interviewing them, for sure. A yellow is gonna be, there may be a great candidate, they didn't meet maybe one of your characteristics, but you might still wanna look at them. Typically, we're gonna give you greens that we're wanting you to go with. Yellows, you may choose to interview. A red is like, don't interview, we are not recommending interviewing this person for whatever reason. Maybe it's something on social media. Maybe it's, they've been non-renewed somewhere else. So, we're gonna be really clear with you about what we find, and then you all can make the decision on where you go from there.
So that's different than what I previously experienced. So I seen a stack of candidates. Here's 3.
We'll walk through each one of
I'm
them,
gonna
Chris.
watch each one.
Fair enough.
I call it, maybe this is not the politically correct way, but the good and the bad, the ugly of every single person in there.
Absolutely.
And so you need, as a board, I get a little nervous, to be fair, if we invite other people into that executive session besides the board, because we're gonna be candid. Now, we're not gonna be demeaning or discredit someone, but we're gonna say exactly what we've heard. Here's the reference checks, here's the background screen, here's what I heard from their board president. And to do that, I need your confidence, just like I need the board president's confidence that told me that. And so there are some sensitive things in there, to be honest. All you have to do is pick up a newspaper or turn on the TV, and you know there's things that are happening. You're gonna get every piece of information we have. You own the information. So all the candidates, I was gonna say, Audrey's gonna get tired of us because of communication, I hope she'll share her cell phone, because it's a constant dialogue. How do we get the board this information? How do we keep this information confidential? What do you need from us to make your job easier? So those things are gonna be nonstop for you, but you're gonna have more information than you probably ever wanna have.
So to that point, you were kind of talking about Audra. I think I've called 3 special board meetings in the last 3 weeks. I think everybody on this board appreciates and is honored to be part of a pretty important decision, but do all have day jobs. How predictable, I'm not going to say how much because I know it's a lot, but how predictable between now and the day we sign on the dotted line do you think we can get with the points in time and the amount of time that the board will need to be involved? Because I think we're all committed to it. I think we all know it's going to be a bunch of time, so that's why I didn't ask how much, because I know it's a big number. But how predictable do you think we can be in terms of, we're gonna do interviews the week of December X, and I'm gonna need you 3 hours for 4 nights that week.
Rick's probably gonna laugh when I say this, but I am a systems person, all right? We're gonna have a process and we're gonna follow it, and really not much of anything's gonna stop us. I had one change to a timeline in the searches that I did last year, and it was literally because I didn't like the candidate pool. And I was really straight up with the board. I was like, I don't like this candidate pool. We need more time to search. I don't think that's gonna be the case for you all. I'm gonna tell you, I think this is one of the best jobs that's gonna come on the market. Proximity, you mentioned you're so close to Nebraska, Missouri, but you're also you have the legends right here. Your facilities you've done so much work in your facilities. I was able to tour the high school gym a couple weeks ago, but I can't imagine what that place is like on Friday night. With the community and the community engagement you have, it's a nice step up for a smaller sized superintendent. It's also kind of a nice lateral move for an assistant suit that's been in a larger district. I just think it's gonna be a really, really great job.
If we have the luxury of coming back, talking to you a second time, we will spend a majority of our time talking about this and walking through in much more detail of what each one of these, if you will, scheduled dates look like and what they entail for you.
And time. And
Yep.
the
Yep.
time. The longest meeting that you're going to have other than the interviews is when we do the screening of applicants. And it's hard to say what that time is gonna be, because if there's 5 really good ones or if there's 10 really good ones, that meeting looks differently, right? And so that's the meeting where I personally want all 7 of you in the room to dig in. And so the timeline is very important.
And this is not to be joking in any fashion, but if we do our job, the timeline is gonna take care of itself. If we don't do our job, we're gonna have extra meetings.
Yeah.
That's not been our experience. And so our job is to do it in a way that is high caliber to get you what you need so you can make an effective decision. If we miss something, that means we've missed something, and we're gonna have more time. Typically, we don't experience that, but
What timeline would you say is the ideal to get the best pool of candidates?
Well, I think either the December or January work. I think for you all, it is, what's ideal with, are you gonna have new board members? And if so, how many? Are there people, we know we're gonna have 2 because someone's not running, or we hope for no change in our board. But if you're gonna have change in the board, there's really been a lot of discussion. We just had a 30-minute discussion about this last week about, can board members who aren't sworn in yet participate in the interview process? So I think you need to have the conversation about, are there gonna be new board members in this election time? And if so, what engagement do we want them to have, if any?
Yeah, so we'll have at least 1 new board member. We've got 4 candidates running for 3 open spots. One opinion, I don't think we ought to do anything unnatural to avoid a new board member or not. I think the reason to go fast is to lock in the very best candidate. But I don't think we ought to do anything unnatural to avoid a new board member. I think that's somewhat disingenuous. I'm not worried about it, but to me, the reason to go fast is to lock in the best candidate before somebody else does.
My experience has been, and I guess to kind of echo a little bit of what Dr. Hubbard said, is middle of January has typically been the sweet spot
For the hire?
for the hire.
For the hire.
So you do the interviews right after Christmas. Typically what happens is we see a little bit of an uptick around that break time. You get a week or two off, people polishing their information off, they're doing some investigation of the district. I also think that this is a big enough district, 2,000 kids almost. Currently, right now, as of today, I don't want to say competition, but you don't have a ton of competing districts that are your size, your region, that are trying to do the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean next week it doesn't happen, but typically middle of January is kind of been our sweet spot. And then they shifted our election season a couple years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now, and that made our boards kind of say, hey, should there be another way to go about it? But typically, the sweet spot still is that middle of January for most of our boards. We get into the mode, and to be fair, just like trying to recruit a teacher. There's only so many of them. And so if we're last to the party, we may not have as many candidates. I don't see that in this environment currently, but there's possibilities for that to happen. But I certainly wouldn't rush just so that we can say that we were the first one to get to hire, because that doesn't always pan out as well. And so, again, I think we give you the pros and cons. You know your community, you know your board the best. If you have an internal candidate, that's going to impact that, folks, guarantee it. And we didn't talk a lot about the internal candidate yet, but when we come back, we would. But with strong internal candidates, if you happen to have some, depending on how public that is, current soups, let's just say what it is. They're going to pick up the phone, call your current soup. Hey, how you doing? What's the district like? Hey, what's the board like? You know, that's just what human nature is. Hey, do you have any internal candidates before I hang up? Yes, maybe we do. If you're a tweener and you're not sure if you want to apply or not, there's a strong internal candidate. Hey, I'm not putting my neck out there on that board for my board because I may not have a chance to get it. So that's a dynamic as well.
I also think that if you have a strong internal candidate, it creates a domino effect. Let's just hypothetically, your high school principal is a strong candidate for this job. High school principals aren't easy to come by either, right? So then you have this domino effect down the system. So that's something to consider as well.
Okay.
Are you guys leaning December, January? Do you have a strong preference?
I don't know that we've talked about it enough. I mean, I think that we would be silly to not take advantage of that we're early enough in the process to get an early candidate, but I agree with you. I don't think we ought to rush it either. I mean, I probably need to spend some more time talking through. One question on things like the timeline or other board decisions relative to this process. Are those board action items? So if you asked me the question, are we leaning towards December or January? Hypothetically, we hire KASB, come back a second time, we pick December. Do we need I move that we go with the December timeline, or is that not typically something you see?
People do it both ways.
Okay.
I will encourage you that every meeting probably you're going to put on the agenda superintendent search so that you have some time specifically to talk about where we're at in the process. I will say most of that is public knowledge, so you can share with your community that, hey, here's where we're currently at, here's what we're currently doing, here's where we're going to go. And then at times, if we need to be in executive session, we would include that as well. But like for a timeline, many times it's not a bad thing to just say, hey, 7-0 or hey, let's put it up for a motion. Those things aren't bad.
Yep.
It also is a way to notify your community again that, hey, the board is making some decisions moving toward this goal. Because a lot of people won't pay attention that you had it on the agenda and you talked about it, but they will read the minutes. And so if it just says, oh, hey, they had a conversation about superintendent search. Okay, great. I see you at church on Sunday. You're like, hey, what's going on? But if I see, hey, you guys approved a new timeline and we post that timeline,
an application closes, because a lot of times those teachers will be like, I don't even know when it closes. And so
Yeah.
I think just having that clear timeline on the website is really important.
Okay.
So, this is maybe a loaded question, but
Thank you, Chris.
I feel like we're a district large enough that somebody's first time would be tough to evaluate for you folks to understand how they're gonna be a good fit in Tonganoxie if they've never been a school superintendent. Am I thinking right? Or, I know there's a lot of great people, there's a lot of great educators, but for somebody to never do the job
So,
seems like a
let me take this. 'Cause
struggle.
I'm kind of a corny dude, you'll pick up on that, but, did just a little bit of reconnaissance work on your salary. To be fair, just in my experience, again, 7 years, I've had maybe one out of the 40 searches I've done that have paid less than what the outgoing superintendents do pay. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is depending on where the board and the range that they feel comfortable with in compensation will dictate drastically whether you're gonna have a larger pool of experienced candidates, and let's say, when I say experienced, that have sat in that chair, or somebody that possibly would be ascending from that principal or that district office position. Just a quick snapshot, Chris, so don't hold me to this, but the research that I did would say that many of our current superintendents would possibly be taking either a lateral move or pay cut at this current rate. And so that's something that we'll spend time with the board to talk about. Say, what range are you comfortable with, what are your neighbors paying, where are you at in 4A, where are you at in the region? Because those are things that, to be honest, if you had the luxury of having Warren for a decade almost, you haven't had to talk about, right? And so those are gonna be things that I really want to spend some time with you on, so that you can make the best decision, because that will and absolutely does dictate who applies and who doesn't. It is just what it is.
Absolutely.
Lots of times, I'm only gonna be able to negotiate, potentially, not always, that one time when I get hired. And so, we're gonna wanna be competitive there, and maybe at first glance, it's worth a really good conversation at this point to have.
I also think too that it is a loaded question. It's a really hard question, because there are really experienced superintendents that could come in and maybe not be exactly what you thought. That
Meet our
might be.
expectations.
Yes. And then there might be an assistant that has been an assistant, has really sat in a lot of seats, HR, communications, curriculum instruction, maybe even operations, that have had all these experiences as an assistant student that could come in and knock the socks off of it. So I think you have to look at their experiences, where they've been, what kind of districts they've been in. Like Tonganoxie for me, if I were applying for this job, it's not something I've had similar experience I was a 5A, let's say I was in a 5A, and I had some of the same characteristics, but I grew up in a town just like this, and so for me, this would be like more like home. So I don't know that you can always judge that book by its cover, right? I just think you have to look at their experiences. Their references are so very important. Like, we asked that question, they've never been a superintendent. Can they handle a board? Can they work with the board effectively? And many times assistant supes have just as much experience in working with boards as superintendents do. So it just kind of depends on where they're coming from. But I will tell you, the characteristics report, I have had characteristics report where we want an experienced leader, that we want someone who has been a superintendent. And so back to Dr. Hart's comment, if that is something that you all come up with, like, we want someone who has had experience sitting in the superintendent seat, you're really gonna have to look at yourself.
Okay.
Really gonna be a good conversation to have, because, and you can do that ahead of time versus us waiting to the end, because we're gonna get calls.
So is there benefit to that? To get that kind of nailed down?
Yes.
What we feel is comfortable?
Yeah, and we'll lead you through that pretty early in the process. again, whether it's Justin or somebody else, usually tell boards, hey, as we get closer, talk about what is a comfortable range. And the range would be compensation and also the fringe. Everybody knows what Warren's making, just to be fair. I mean, we could pull it up really quickly. And so they know it too. And so we just want to make sure that when they call and they reach out to us, that we can say, hey, this is what the board's considering. And that will go a long way, especially if they're a current student.
We will give you all the data in regards to comparisons. So you'll have all of that, it'll come to you in a report.
Okay. What other questions? Well, I think on behalf of the board, I really appreciate you guys coming out tonight, and we intend to make a decision pretty quickly Monday at the board meeting, I hope, and we need some help, so.
We really appreciate the opportunity to be here and continue to serve Kansas kids and Kansas
And
schools.
shameless plug, we hope to see you at the convention here in November. So, hey, thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Forrest, can you make that? right. Hi, Molly.
Good evening. How are you all?
We're well, thank you. Molly, Greg, thank you for joining us tonight. We are in a public in-session meeting on live streamed on YouTube just for everybody's visibility. So appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with us tonight. Wanted to better understand kind of the approach from a few finalists relative to our selection firm. Don't plan on any action tonight. Would likely act at the Monday regularly scheduled board meeting on Monday the 13th. So appreciate your time again, and with that I turn it over to you, and hopefully have a few minutes at the end for some Q&A. So
Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, for spending an evening doing this. So my name is Greg Batenhorst, and I am a consultant with Ray & Associates. I'm going to turn things over here immediately to Molly Schwartzoff and allow her to introduce herself and some of the other key players that would be a part of our team if we were to work with you. And then I'll give you a little bit of my background and we'll jump right in. So Molly, you want to take it from there? Tell us who you are, what you're all about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Thanks, Greg. My name is Molly Schwartzoff, and I am the Vice President with Ray & Associates. I've been with the firm for about 13 years. I am in the corporate office. I would love the opportunity to come and see you and work with your stakeholders and get to know you all better. In addition to myself and Dr. B, we would have 2 additional team members that would be joining us. A gentleman from Kansas, and then our 2 managing directors, Dr. Dan Bittman out of Minnesota, and then Dr. David Faltis out of Texas. Dan Bittman would probably be your managing director along with myself, and then Dr. B would be your main point of contact throughout the search.
Very good.
First of all, before I jump into my bio, I just want to say thank you for your service. This is not an easy time to be a board member, and it does take a lot of time. I know you make an exorbitant amount of money doing this, but really thank you for all you do for your kids and for your community. That's just outstanding. And please let me make it very clear from the start, something that I definitely picked up on when watching your meeting last week when you chose us as one of the people to interview. We work for you. We have ideas and models to share with you ultimately if we are the ones chosen, but we work for you. This search is your search and not ours. And we will do everything in the world to cater to you and to make sure that we are giving you the product that you want and deserve. This is you. This is your mission statement, vision statement, your value systems. You have a new strategic plan, which is great. That's always good for a new superintendent to walk in and have that available to guide them in their work, especially early on as they make the transition to being the leader of the district. This is your North Star. This is who you say you are. So when you think about choosing a superintendent, and when you think about choosing a superintendent firm, who is going to be the one that is going to execute your vision and your mission and your strategic plan? That is critically important moving forward. My wife and I live in Omaha, Nebraska. And I'll jump in and give you a little bit of my background real quick and tell you why Omaha is important. But I just retired in July of 2024 after 40 years as an educator. I was a teacher, adolescent mental health therapist, school counselor, assistant principal, assistant superintendent, adjunct professor at a couple of different colleges, taught or coached everything that had a ball, baseball, basketball, football, golf. I share those details with you. My wife is also a 38-year English teacher, so we both served in education for combined 78 years. I share my background with you a little bit to kind of make the point that I have been in about every different facet of education that there is. So I'm very well versed at what good school districts look like, what good schools look like, and I think it's an asset that I bring to the team, that I have a depth and breadth of experience that maybe even a lot of educators don't, having been a teacher, having been in the counseling field, having been an administrator. So that's one of the things I think I bring to the table. Omaha's important because First National Bank in Omaha, I think, has a really good tagline for their business, and they say that they are a great big small bank. That's what I think Ray & Associates is. We have the robust resources of a national search firm. And I think that's important when you think about your district because of the proximity to the Kansas City metropolitan area and also proximity to Lawrence and KU. You have a location that could be desirable to people on a national level. So we have the resources, and we'll walk you through that here in a little bit. We have the resources at a national level. We have consultants all over the United States, and we literally touch all 50 states to get the word out about this great opportunity. But we are also a very tight-knit group of people, and Molly and myself and Dr. Sean Hudspeth from the Kansas area and Dan Bittman from Minnesota, we all have grown up a lot in smaller areas and everything, so we feel like we have a Midwest sensibility to us. And I was superintendent for 7 years in a district very similar in size to yours, and feel like I have a good sense of what communities like this want and need in leaders. So I think that balance of being national, but I think we take it down and we personalize it very well for all the districts we work with. We've been in the business for 50 years. It makes us one of the oldest, if not the oldest, search firm around. We feel like we have processes that have kept us on the cutting edge of what we do, and we are very well versed on what's out there in the world of education right now. We have, like I said before, we have associates all across the nation, and one of the first things that we do when we get a search is we contact all of those associates to say, here's an opportunity available. Who do you know within your sphere of influence and potential superintendents that you know that would be a good choice for this position? This slide is important because we as a group have done a lot of work over the past year, kind of like you did with the strategic plan for the district, really doing some self-reflection on how we could get better as a search firm. And we came out with this kind of guidelines from our leadership team that are our focus points for when we get searches. We want to ask questions and make sure that we know what your community wants. And we'll talk about community engagement here in a little while. We want to make sure that we're active listeners and are listening fully to what you say you want and need, as opposed to just giving you a cookie cutter timeline or a cookie cutter approach to doing interviews. We want to make sure that something I heard very clearly through your meeting last week, that we are meeting your needs and that it's your search and not ours. We want to work effectively with all groups in your community, and we want to make sure that we act in a meaningful way and execute the plan as best we can to make sure that we are serving you as best we can. Your strategic plan is important because it talks about student-centered vision, community-driven approaches, sustainable growth, and accountability and transparency. So those are 4 things you should be looking for, number 1, in a search firm, and number 2, in your next superintendent. Who is that superintendent that's going to make sure that it's always about kids? Who's that superintendent that is going to know the importance of your community and the community's input in the district? Who is it going to be that's going to be that person that can champion sustainable growth over time? And who's that person going to be that's going to make sure that people are held accountable and that you as a district, you as a board, are transparent in everything that you do? So those things are critical moving forward. As I said before, we do have an expansive database of potential candidates for you. Over 4,000 school administrators are in our database, but we may even go outside that database and reach out to people or find out about people that may be interested in us that aren't currently in our database. Your best person, the person that may get this job, may be a person that doesn't even know he or she is looking for a job right now. They may hear about it and think, oh, you know what, that's interesting to me. I may give that a look. If you look in the testimonial that's given in on this slide, I think it's important that there's a line in there that says, their level of customer service and hospitality is second to none. That's who I truly think that we are as a search firm. I think the people that have worked with us and have felt success felt that we were very amenable to everything that they wanted and needed, and that we were, very easy people to work with, and that's what we want to be for you as a district if we were to get the search. We have a lot of activity on our website, as you see by the slide. We continuously enjoy contact with the largest administrative candidate pool of all the firms out there. And as I said before, that person that comes here may not even be within that registered database. They may be somebody that's lurking that we find that ends up being a perfect fit. Molly, is there anything else you would like to throw in regarding connecting our candidates with CARE before we jump into more to the process?
No, you're doing a great job.
All righty,
You're doing everything great.
you're the boss. So let's talk about the process a little bit. What is true in 2025 is what was true in 1984 when I first walked into a classroom. Education is about relationships, relationships, relationships. Your relationship with the community, our relationship with you as a board, if we were chosen to lead the search, those relationships are so, so important. And we look forward to having the opportunity to potentially partner with you. We are going together build a timeline for the search. Again, there are models that we have that have worked in the past for us, but in listening to your meeting last week, I know I definitely felt a sense of, you don't want it to drag out forever, but you want it to be thorough. So we'll look for that sweet spot. Typical searches may go somewhere in the range of 3 to 4 months. You may think, oh no, we're not gonna do it. We can't stand each other that much. We like each other, but we don't like each other that much. Also, consider the fact of the timing of the calendar now. You're into mid-October by the time you make a decision next week. So you're going to start bumping up against the holidays, which can be advantageous to you because you may use holiday breaks. Oftentimes, candidates have a tendency to look at and apply for positions over holiday breaks when they have a break from their regular job. So that's something to think about, but that's something that we would do. That would be the very first thing that we would do with you if we were chosen. We'd sit down with you and we just hammer out the timeline. We'd look at your personal calendars and figure out what works for you. We're going to talk a little bit more too about a profile of an ideal candidate. We're going to talk about 31 character traits of good leaders here in a little bit as a guide to help you develop a profile of who you think would be successful here. We are going to be there every step of the way with you through the interview process. First interviews are going to be individual interviews with all of you, conducted by 1 or 2 of us. We'll ask all of you the same questions and look for consistencies and areas of divergence in what you are thinking about and hoping for in a leader. But those are very important interviews for us to get a better view of what you think the needs are of the district moving forward. And we're going to be there all the way to the end, including helping you develop a compensation package for candidates, for the candidate that is chosen. So here's a little bit more about that profile development. We have a research-based method of 31 qualities of exemplary leaders that we use as a guide to help you determine who best fits in your district. You're going to take that list of 31 and be challenged to narrow it down to about 10. And those 10 qualities will be the ones that you say are most emblematic of what you're looking for, and they will be a key part of any of the literature, flyers, information that we post on websites about the position. We'll also work with you to get a profile not only of the district, but of the community. And all that comes together so that you have a clear vision of the person that you're looking for. Those 31 qualities will also be given to any of your stakeholders via an online survey. They will do the same exercise that you're going to do. They'll try to narrow it down to 10 traits that they would like to see in a leader. And you can compare what you think to what they think as a jumping off point of that profile of the exemplary candidate. Those surveys are available in numerous different languages if the community needs them. We can go any of a number of languages in case you have people that are not English speaking that would want to complete the survey. We are going to do in-person or virtual stakeholder meetings with you. That's your choice. The choices that you make regarding in-person versus virtual is going to be how you want to use your time and how you want to use your financial resources. Example, successful search we had were myself and one of the other consultants completed 13 focus groups in a period of 2 days. We met with students, we met with parents, we met with teachers, we met with support staff members, we met with community leaders, we met with administrators, and we met with them in different groups. Anything to do to ensure that all stakeholders have a voice in this incredibly important decision for the community and for the school district. It's important that you are transparent and that you are willing to have the community involved as you go through this process. We ask the same questions of all the groups, but the fun part of that is that while the questions may be the same, the conversations vary. You go off in different, we ask this question, but you give me, so if I say, what's the most important attribute that you're looking for, or what's the most important thing that a new superintendent has to do coming in? Need to be committed to diversity. Okay, what does diversity mean to you? So we do those kinds of, spinning off the individual questions to build up, again, this profile of a perfect candidate, and also engage your people so that you know exactly what your people are looking for. Because the good news is you haven't done this now for 7 years. So that's a good thing. And as I said earlier, we're going to interview all of you individually to get your thoughts on what the district needs moving forward. All right, lots of notes. In the recruitment phase, we work aggressively to recruit top candidates for the position by personally reaching out to them, encourage them to apply. And I can even think of people based on a search that I had done in the state of Kansas earlier. There's a handful of people I thought, you know what, I would reach out to them to either A, encourage them to apply, or B, hey, do you know people that you think would be a good fit in Tonganoxie? Having another consultant that is from the Kansas area is also going to be an asset in helping you kind of get an outreach across the state while we're also doing the outreach nationally. We utilize that network of associates, and again, there are 50 plus of us all across the United States, and we advertise on many different fronts using our website, and basically we work with you to determine what you think is going to be the best bang for your buck in regards to the advertising that you want to utilize. And so now I'm going to turn it over to the advertising expert and ask Molly to pick it up from there.
And yes, for me, just a nerd, and I love the advertising world. There's several bids that we will give you a list of those that know of, that we've had experience with, and we provide honest feedback. We're not just going to sell you a package just to sell you a package. We're going to talk about where you can get the most exposure, where we've seen the best results stemming from. But ultimately, advertising is going to be the same with any firm that you interview. We're all across the board. We all know the same vendors. We all know the same campaigns. The biggest thing that we have in our arsenal is our associates. Dr. Batenhorst is very humble, but we have nearly 50 Dr. Batenhorst that we are lucky enough, that I am lucky enough to work with every single day. They are former superintendents, former lawyers, former CFOs, COOs, with experience that I can't even begin to describe, and their networking is second to none. And what's great is when we get a job, we reach out to our associates and say, okay, we've got this job coming out. Here's kind of the Cliff Notes summary on the district and what they're looking for and who they are. And then they start reaching out to those folks and talking to people that they know, and it's that networking of, like Dr. B mentioned, you may have candidates apply that didn't know they were going to be looking for a job. And that's where our real strengths are when it comes to recruitment and building you an awesome candidate pool for you to select from.
Something Molly said reminded me, one of the things I forgot to share in my bio is that I'm a Ray and Associates alum. I was placed in my superintendency in a district, like I said, very similar in size and kind of geographically to Tonganoxie. I was in eastern Iowa in the Mount Vernon Community School District, which is very close to Iowa City and the University of Iowa and Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So close to metropolitan areas, but a small town with its own vibe and its own values and everything. So Ray and Associates placed me, and then Ray and Associates was chosen to replace my successor. And I was just back there last week for homecoming, and the district feels very good about my successor. And I can tell you, I've worked with all the different search firms when I was in the superintendent pool many years ago, and Ray and Associates was by far the most responsive and the most comfortable group that I worked with. I do have a horror story of one of the parts of the interview process for the Mount Vernon position was a community forum where community members came and the candidates stood up on the stage of the middle school auditorium, and all the people who came from the community, and there were 50, 60 people, were able to ask questions. They gave a note card to the moderator, who happened to be Molly, and it was the last thing on the schedule after an incredibly long day of interviewing. And I thought, questions been going, I thought, we gotta be pretty close to done. All of a sudden the moderator says, yeah, Dr. Badenhorst, we're about halfway through. I just like said, shoot me now, I'm done. Somebody else can have it, I'm done. But I did want to throw that in, that I've been on both sides with Ray and Associates, and that's one of the reasons I reached out to Molly as I was winding down my superintendency about potentially joining the group. So we have our position, we have our profile of the ideal candidate, and we're working with you, and we have surveyed, and we have done focus groups and everything. So now we're building our candidate pool. Our screening is very intensive, and someone in the group on last week mentioned the D word. That's Des Moines. Yeah. We do extensive background investigations and internet checks on all the candidates for presentation, including doing deep dives into social media, Facebook and Twitter and whatever might be out there. We do a deep dive and a pretty significant check of references on all of our candidates. But once you get to that final group or that final person, we go even a step further and go into a deeper review of their criminal background, potential criminal background, civil litigation, Social Security, sex offender, all those things to ensure E-Verify, to ensure that we turn over as many stones as we can. Sometimes you're only as good as the references that you're reaching out to as well, though, because there still can be surprises, but we do everything in the world to make sure that there are no surprises in this process. And then we bring our top candidates to you through this process. So let's talk a little bit bigger picture of what that might look like. Let's say, for sake of argument, that you have 20 candidates, 20 people who have fully completed the application process. One of our jobs is to reduce that field down for you. So let's say that we take those 20 and we determine a certain number of them that we think have promise. If we think they have promise, then we're going to do phone interviews with them. We're going to ask them to complete a one-way video that Molly will talk about here in a little while. We're going to do reference checks on those people, and then we're going to, again, try to reduce that field for you. But let me make one thing very clear. You will have access to all the materials of all 20 of those candidates. You can dig as deep or as shallow as you want. You may say, no, that's why we hired you, Greg. You guys bring forth a group to us that you think is going to be the players here. Or you may be one of those people that wants to dig and make a recommendation. So Ryan might see that he may review all 20 and he really likes Joe Smith. But Joe Smith isn't in the group that we brought forward to you. Ryan can say, you know what, I really like Joe Smith because. And if you say, okay, Ryan, we are willing to agree with you on that, we'll put Joe Smith in the group. Karen might say, you know what, no, guys, the group you have is just fine. So you got this group, and then we narrow it down. Then we try to get you down to about 5 or 6 people that you're going to interview as kind of a semifinal level. Those are the ones that are going to interview with you as a board. You can choose to do that virtually. You can choose to do that in person. Part of that will hinge on where your candidates are from and whether or not you want to, let's say somebody from Minneapolis decides they want to throw their hat in the ring. Do you want to have that person come in person? Do you want to do them all virtually? That's going to be your choice. So you're going to take those 5 or 6 people, and you're going to try to narrow the field down to about 2 or 3. 3 is usually better than 2, because if you interview 2 finalists and you offer it to one, and they don't take it, but you really weren't thrilled with 2, you're kind of in bucket. So rule of thumb, 2 works. I mean, there were 2 finalists when I got the job in Mount Vernon, but 3 is a little more easy to work with, just in case. But then, like I said, when you get down to that final part, there's going to be a deeper dive into their background. And as the leader of the search, one of my responsibilities too is to take their resumes and ensure they line up with transcripts, with credentials, so that there aren't any situations where this person said they received a certain degree from a place, but in reality they didn't. So that gives you an example of what that might look like. And then we're going to have all kinds of options for you with regard to how that final interview, how any of the interview process works, especially that final interview. I'll give you the Mount Vernon example briefly. So when I did an initial interview with just the board, they narrowed the field to 2, and then we did an all-day interview. I did 3 different interviews with groups that consisted of students and teachers and support staff members and parents and community leaders, et cetera, et cetera. So I did 3 of those. I interviewed again with the board. I interviewed with the principals. We did a luncheon. Each of us went out to lunch with board members, and so there was kind of an informal give and take there. And then we did this community forum that I described earlier. That's one example of how to do it. There are many different ways to do it. If you're in the Omaha area, they do interviews with the board, but in public. So any member of the public can come and watch the interview process. We'll cater that to what you want the most. We will come with suggestions, but ultimately it is your choice. So again, we talked about reviewing the top candidates and being able to look at all their materials. So now I'm going to ask Molly to go a little bit deeper with the the one-way video interviews that I talked about earlier, Spark videos. And she's also going to talk about a consensus building matrix that we use that takes your feedback on candidates and helps you focus on the top people in the process. Fire away.
Thanks, Greg. For sake of time, I'm not going to play the videos, but you all have the link. You should have had that email to you. I'd encourage you to take a peek and look at it. It's on a program called SparkHire. Some people are familiar with it, some people are not. It is a one-way video interview. It's a great tool to look at people, ask them a series of questions. All candidates would be asked the same questions and see how they respond, and see if it's somebody that you connect with that you would like to take the chance on and interview at the next stage of the search. What's great about this tool is it is completely customizable. So we would customize those questions for the candidates to answer based off of the needs of your district. They would also be based off of feedback that we had received from your stakeholders earlier in the search, as well as suggested questions from our one-on-one interviews with you all. Ultimately, the board would have final say on what questions are asked of the candidates. And then when we got to that semi-meeting, when we are presenting stage of candidates, you would have the opportunity to watch those videos of all candidates that have completed that process. And it just helps give you some additional information, additional knowledge to help you facilitate that discussion and ultimately make that decision on who you want to interview for that first round. Dr. B also mentioned a consensus building matrix. This is a tool that we like to use with our board. It's an individual assignment where you go in and you compare each candidate against one another. Essentially, it's a forced matrix to help you rank the candidates individually. What then happens is Dr. B or myself would then compile the scores. It would still remain anonymous, but you would see where your ranking system lines up with your peers. This is not a forced situation where you have to pick the top 4 or top 6 for your first round of interviews. It simply opens the door for discussion. Board member A may have seen something that board member B didn't, and it just opens up that dialogue and that conversation for you all to deliberate and discuss who you ultimately want to interview. Once the consensus has been established on who you want to interview, both for the first round and second round, you guys are selecting the candidates, and then we help finalize those board interview questions. We do have some template questions that we would put in front of you for your consideration. We also ask your community during that profile building stage what questions they would like asked of the candidate. So you will get to see what your students are suggesting, what your teachers are suggesting, parents, non-parent community members, your administrators. You get to see what all these various groups are looking for when it comes to interviewing of the candidates. Then ultimately you all would have full control once again on what questions you want asked, and you could add in your own have your complete own set of questions, or work off of the ones that we provided as well. Greg, is there anything you want to add on that one?
Nope, I'm gonna ask you to land the plane with the summary and get them ready to ask their questions of us. I will preview and say that after you've asked questions of us, I'm going to ask 2 of you. So start thinking ahead of what are you most proud of in this district and in this community, because you're trying to sell somebody to come here and be your next leader. So think about what are you most proud of, and what would make me want to come here if I wasn't so old and gray and bald and everything else. What would make me want to come here? And what do you see as the biggest challenge for the district in the next 5 years? So keep those in mind after you ask your questions. Molly's gonna give a little summary of what we've talked about, then she'll jump off with the question and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Greg. So this is just kind of a wrap up of everything that Greg and I have been talking about for about the last half hour. So we just addressed our unique size and scope, the searches that we've completed, the pool of candidates that we have, along with our engagement and the support we have from our team. Talking about the outreach that we have with our associates, with the relationships we've built over the last 50 years, along with our website traffic that's built off of reputation. Then our candidate information in regards to the one-way video interviews, background checks, talking about the board's leadership performance, talking about that timeline, assisting with the compensation assessment, helping finalize that profile and facilitating the interviews with you all, as well as helping you make a decision on the advancement of candidates both for the first round and for the finalist round. And then ultimately, the fun part of the whole search is the selection. We would help assist with that contract finalization if needed, and also with the board candidate follow-up as well. And with that is the end of our presentation, and we greatly appreciate your time this evening. This is a hard and very big decision, and we welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that you may have.
I'll start. Talk to me a little bit. There's another firm in here at 5. One of the things they said that was very similar to what you said is it's our search. On one hand, that means a lot to me because it is our search. On the other hand, we don't do this every day. You do. Talk to me about how you would balance making it our search versus not letting us go down any weird paths. Because, if we weren't concerned about weird paths, we go try to do it ourselves, and we are concerned about that.
So I would start by saying that's one of the most critical pieces is right off the bat when we do the individual interviews with you. So we get a good sense of where you're at as an individual board member and kind of what your sense is of your functioning as a board and building relationships with you. I'm proud of the fact that in my tenure in education, I've always had really positive relationships with my school communities that I worked as a leader, and I had a very good relationship with the boards that I worked with, both as an assistant superintendent and a superintendent. So we are going to be in a tight personal relationship for 3 or 4 months, and it's being able to have honest conversations with one another and being very transparent with one another about what you're looking for. We have models like crazy. If you look into the 24-page proposal, you'll see an example of a timeline in there. You heard me talk about an example of how a final interview process look like. We'll have all those for you, but it's going to be a menu and say, this is what best fits Tonganoxie. This wouldn't work for us. So it's a matter of us, yes, we have the expertise. If you said, man, we're just not comfortable, it's yours. Go. We could do that tomorrow. But we really need to, in the early stages, work with you to determine what are those pieces. Because again, I heard you guys talk last week about, timeline was one of the things, and that's always a tricky one. Your current superintendent did a nice job of telling you early. So you are somewhat ahead of the game. Now, I told my district a year and almost a half in advance. But you've got a good jump on things, especially as you think about other positions that could open up, that could drive part of your thinking about timelines. But Molly, what else would you say to reassure them that we don't just come in and sell them a cookie cutter program, whether it's Tonganoxie or it's Minneapolis-St. Paul?
Yeah. Now, one of my favorite phrases is telling boards that you're lucky enough you don't have to do this every single day. We do. So we've taken the bumps, we've taken the wins, we've learned as we've grown over the last 50 years. We know what works, what doesn't work, but we don't necessarily know your community and your needs the way that you do. So we customize it, but we are also advisors. I like to say that we're a team. We're our team with the board. We become a team working on what best fits your district. For example, when we say we customize it, when we talk about that profile building piece, we joke around, we call it our foundation groups, which is your parents, your students, your administrators, teachers, non-parent community members. But we go far beyond that. I've had districts that we've invited clergy members. We've had city council. We've had realtor groups. That's when we say we customize it. You know your folks and you know your needs, and we want to adjust our process to accommodate those needs and make sure that everyone feels good and comfortable about the ultimate decision, because this is a huge role. This is the leader of your school district. This is your one employee. We are here to make sure that everyone feels comfortable at the end of the day.
And I think too, the backgrounds of the individuals that be with you is a key part, and I'll just elaborate a little bit more on me if I were to serve as the lead. I grew up in North Platte, Nebraska, and so city of about 20,000, but in a very large agricultural area. I worked at a John Deere dealership with my father for 10 straight summers, 10 straight long summers. And I also was an assistant superintendent in the most affluent, high-achieving district in the state of Missouri. I'm equally as comfortable speaking to a farmer as I am a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I think that, along with the other teammates' backgrounds, puts you in a position to ensure that we are listening to all of you as board members, but also your community, to make sure that the process fits here and isn't just something that we throw together.
Questions?
Do you have any, like a system of support for the new superintendent when he's starting out in the new year?
So formally, we do check-ins for sure, minimally like every 6 months for the first year to 2 years. I would do more than that. if I'm attached to a search, I reach out more often than that. I'm retired. I mean, and pretty soon the weather's going to change and my golf time is going to be done. So this is it. This is what I do. So I have the time to dedicate to ensuring that a process goes well, but that then that new person feels that they have the support system necessary from us to be successful. You know, people always talk about that first 100 days, whether it's the President of the United States or the superintendent of the school district, as being so important, and it is. But yeah, we make sure that they know that they can call us 24/7, just as you can as a board during the search. You would have my phone number. I can be down here as many times in person as you need me to be. But yes, we do offer that support all the way, especially, you know, your current superintendent would not have needed as much support in the beginning, I don't think, as others, because he had fairly significant, obviously, experience in Kansas, but also experience as a superintendent. Bring in somebody from the St. Louis area, let's say, they are not going to be as familiar with the inner workings of Kansas education, policy, procedures, et cetera, nor will they have as good a sense of the community. We will have been embedded with you for several months. So if I don't know Tonganoxie by the time the search is done, then I haven't done my job. And then it's important for me to be able to work with that person and say, okay, going in, here are the 3 or 4 things I think you need to know to be successful. So yeah, we're going to be there for them.
So I feel like I'm going to hear 3 of the very same presentations.
You bet.
What's important to Tonganoxie?
Mm-hmm.
It is our search. We are going to work hard for you. What separates you from the other 2 candidates?
I was going to go a different way with the answer and say that ultimately, after the 3 presentations, who are you comfortable with? Who do you like? Who's going to come in and roll up their sleeves and you feel like you can trust more than any of the others? I think the biggest strength we have is in our diversity of the people that would be involved in the search and their skill sets. And like I said earlier, the combination of being a bigger firm that has national power, but at the same time, I mean, Molly and I came from we have a Midwest sensibility about us, and that's something that we would bring to the table. Again, I think one of the things that I personally would bring is I just served as a superintendent for 7 years in a community almost the same size, in somewhat of the same kind of demographic set. So I know I had an extremely positive, good 7-year run as a superintendent. I know what works in places like this. So I think that could separate, me and us from others, and just the vast experience that we have within our team to serve you well. And I know that there are several associates I can reach out to and say, okay, I'm working with Tonganoxie, I'm running into this hurdle. What advice would you give me, David Faltis, to say, to work with that group? Molly, anything else?
Yeah, I think that it's important to know what the range is for the firm. Greg hit the nail on the head. It's who you're comfortable with, who you want to work with, because you are going to create a relationship with your team. It's going to be about 3 to 4 months. But ultimately, you want to look at the outreach as well and think about what you as a board are looking for. Rain Associates is going to bring you the best available, not just the best in Kansas, not just the best in the Midwest. We're going to bring you the best across the country for you to determine who's the next leader for your school district. That may be important to the board. You all may say, you know what, we are comfortable in the Midwest, that's our region, and that's great. There's not a wrong answer there. Greg is spot on. It boils down to what kind of outreach you're looking for and the relationship that you are seeking with your team.
Yeah. And I feel like we're going to get the local candidates no matter who the search firm is.
Yes.
I think that's A, B, or C search firm, but reaching out with a local search firm might be tougher from a national level to get candidates, or maybe not be their focus.
I heard you talk in your meeting last week. You kind of shied away maybe from a couple of firms, making that top 3 because you saw larger districts that kind of look like their focal point. And for some firms, that's kind of they're more focused on that than maybe, but if you were to go on to HYA, they do tons and tons of searches, large and small and everything. So we all have that background, but I do think that we have a really good balance of people who know what works in small and large districts. And I taught in a school of 133 kids and 300 residents, and I've worked in districts that had 22,000 students. I've worked in very high achieving places and other places that needed a turnaround help. And the experience of Dan and Sean and others that have been in the educational field, along with the one thing we forgot to point out earlier, we also have a very robust office staff that sometimes not all firms do. So we have secretarial support and marketing support and media support to help us quickly do things like put together the flyer that will be the guide in the application process. So we have a robust support team in the corporate offices in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, that helps us maybe get things done a little more smoothly and quickly. You don't have to worry about Greg making the flyer, which is a good thing, because Greg would turn to his wife and say, "Mary Lou, make this for me, please."
Right. And I assume a legal team as well?
Yeah, so you want to talk about the legal team?
Yep, no, we have a legal team on staff as well. We would also want to be in touch with your legal team if you have legal representative, just to make sure that Kansas laws are being followed as well. But yes, you have that full support. And in addition to what Greg just mentioned, you would have cell phone numbers to reach at all hours. So if something happened after a board meeting at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, you'd be able to reach one of us. Same thing on the weekend.
How we've had 3 special meetings the last 3 weeks trying to move this process along, and I think we've got 7 board members that are highly committed to this, understand the time commitment between now and whenever is significant, but also we all have day jobs.
Mm-hmm.
How predictable do you think we can be in terms of when and how the board would need to be involved from the time a selection firm was selected until we sign on the dotted line with someone?
That's really where there's the hand-holding part for you. We're going to say, okay, we've done this, now it's time to do this, and this is what it'll mean for you in regards to your own personal time and meeting time. Get ready to eat a lot of that. Because you're going to have some meetings that will go a while, because especially when you get into trying to narrow down your candidates, that's where you're really going to spend your time. And that's a good thing, and it's fun. You're going to sit there and go nuts because of the time, but we're going to work with you to ensure that you know exactly the next steps, how much time it's going to take, who should be involved. Like, for example, if we're chosen and we come in and do 10 focus groups, you don't have to be there. Matter of fact, it's probably good that you're not, because then people may feel the comfort to be more open in their comments. So that would be a time where, might stick my head, let's say hi to you at your place of work, or if you're running around the district at a ball game or something, say, hey, how you doing? Do you have any questions? But that would be a part that you wouldn't have to worry about at all. We will be ready to go day one. As soon as you say go, we're ready to roll. And again, one of the first things, it's going to sound very simple and old school, but one of the first things we do is say, okay, get out your calendars. Get out your calendars and let's look and say what coming up for you personally, and what's coming up for you as a board for the district, so that we make sure we build a timeline that works for you. And you have to be really cognizant of the fact that once you get to that ending point, semifinalist interviews, finalist interviews, you have to be really clear on your calendars so that you're ready to roll and are able to set aside a couple days to do those pieces.
And I would just add that we have our first meeting, that very first meeting with you all, just as Greg mentioned. It would be have your personal calendar, have your work calendar out ready to go. We're going to nail down dates. and you're gonna know exactly where you need to be on what days. So we're gonna talk about what meetings board attendance is needed, what time those meetings are gonna be, what days they are. So you're gonna know exactly what stage of the search you're in as well. So not only will you know where you need to be and when, but your community's also gonna be aware. So if someone's in the grocery store and Justin, somebody bumps into you and says, hey, where are we at with the search? You're gonna know immediately. Oh, recruitment started. This is where we're at. We're excited to see the pool of candidates on such and such date. So you'll be fully informed of both where you need to be and also where the search is at every stage.
And we can even craft things like emails for you to say, hey, this would be a good time to send this out to the community saying this is where we're at in the search and everything. So, and you will decide ultimately how you want to use your time and resources with us with regard to whether you want to do things virtually or in person. Again, I'm retired. I've got the time. I'll be down here as many times as you want me here. Easy 3-hour drive. I got tons of friends from college in KC. So it is not a burden whatsoever for me to be down here until I drive you absolutely nuts. And so know that we will give you our total energy for the entire search and beyond.
I want to be respectful of our time because we have another person to talk to at 7, but you said you had questions for us, and you drove down here, so I want to give you the floor.
What do you love about the place? Why would I want to be superintendent here? Tell me.
I've talked too much.
I think we have teachers who care and really want to do their very best for our kids. And, that's the most important thing. And I think, we want to see our test scores go up, but what we really ultimately want to do is to have our students be competent and know and be confident out in the world and know how to conduct themselves, and that's an important thing. I think.
And while test scores are important, statewide, the most important pieces you should be looking for are how do kids do on those assessments that the teachers develop at the classroom level, and how much do they improve year to year, quarter to quarter. That's what you're looking for, that nice stair step of improvement. We get measured ultimately by the bottom line of state test scores, and there's accountability for that, but don't lose the fact that you have excellent people that are with those kids every day and know how they tick, what they can do to grow. So.
I would agree with that. I think people and the teachers and then our community, I think we've made a lot of great investments throughout our town and the district over the last 10 years, and I think that's something we're all pretty proud of.
Your strategic plan says in 16 pages, and it takes a lot of districts 66 pages to say. So kudos to you on that. It's very focused, it's very clear. I would know as a superintendent, what are the measurables that we're looking at to ensure how we're doing. And as a superintendent, I would love to come in and have a strategic plan that's only a year or two old that I don't have to write it myself. Or I don't have to lead the process of writing.
Go execute it.
So, what's the biggest challenge for the new person?
I think the biggest challenge for the new person is not necessarily going to be from Tonganoxie, but it's going to be the state of Kansas relative to school finance. So it's only getting harder. We're fairly healthy, but see cash balances tick down every year. I think the next superintendent is really going to have to be a student of the game around Kansas public school finance and how we tighten the belt in some areas to weather that storm.
So use that as an example. You've just put down a marker of something you think is going to be very important. So you've already thought they're going to have some financial savvy to them. It was good that the person that followed me in Mount Vernon, Iowa, was better at school finance than me. I crushed the education part, I crushed the relationships part, and every state does finances differently, but you figure it out. But they were wise to hire someone that had a little more financial acumen. I didn't run into a financial ditch, but I definitely relied on my CFO to really take the lead in finances. So you've identified one marker. who you're looking for. Okay, I want to be respectful of your time and the next person's time, but we would love to be in relationship with you to make this happen. I'll just leave you with the fact that as you go through this whole process, just remember the two most fundamental questions you need to ask yourself. Number one, what is best for kids? Number two, what is best for kids? Thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. Have a
Thanks,
great night.
thanks, Molly. Dave and Trent, thank you guys for accommodating us tonight. We are in a public meeting, so the meeting is being live streamed. Wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of make your presentation, hopefully leave some time at the end for questions from the board. We don't intend to make any, no action items tonight, but we do have a regular board meeting on Monday, the 13th, and plan to make a selection and get moving pretty fast after that. So with that, thank you again, and we'll give you the floor.
Very good. Well, thank you. And what a neat trip down here. I was driving. I stayed over here by the racetrack, in a Hampton Inn, and driving into town, straight into the west sun. It was quite something. Yeah. And notice that on the window out here too. You guys have a rich history. You've been around a long time. A lot to be proud of. So congratulations on that. My name is Dave Black. I'm with Grunmeyer Leader Services. And Trent Grunmeyer, the owner of the company, is also online with us. Trent, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I will. And for your sake, because I'm driving, I will keep my camera off. But not that beautiful anyway. But just want to listen in tonight. They will lead our presentation. But if there are questions that come up that I can answer, specifics, I wanted to be available tonight since we'll be a team. We get the chance to lead your search. And yes, I'm Grunmeyer behind Grunmeyer Leader Services. Take a lot of pride in leading searches in multiple states. Talked to Jeremy multiple times, and he certainly have had our proposal. But just appreciate the time, the chance to share what we can offer in recruiting and helping you hire the next superintendent. So thanks for accommodating me tonight.
In the packet that I left for you, there is a copy of this presentation. I also emailed the presentation to Justin, and you're welcome to share that and to look that over more carefully if you want later on. That's fine. On the other side is a general description of all of our process. So that gives you a little bit of hands-on view of some of the tools that I'm going to be talking through tonight. This first slide is just a little introduction to the company itself. I've been with Trent. Let's see, I've done at least a dozen searches with Trent, ranging from Lewis Central, which is a school district of about 3,200 students, down to the smallest school district in Iowa, which shared with the next to smallest school district in Iowa, right? So wide range. My role right now is consultant. I retired as a school improvement specialist at Lewis Central in Council Bluffs. About 3,200 students. I was the assistant superintendent for everything there, right? Been retired for about 2 years and been doing searches with Trent. Actually started before I retired. Did 2 searches with him at Lewis Central prior to my retirement. The other consultant that will be assigned to you specifically would be Tony Allsworth. He is a practicing superintendent right now. Couldn't be here tonight because he has a personnel matter to deal with his board. So he's back at the ranch dealing with a board issue right now. This is a general graphic of our overall process. What we try to do at Grunmeyer Leader Services is help you select the best fitting person for your needs as a district. And so there's a planning stage with that, there's recruitment, there's lots of behind the scenes stuff that goes on with that, and I'll go into that process a little bit later. We then help you to screen your applicants. You will actually get material for every single applicant that applies for the job. We then synthesize that information with you and for you, help facilitate process for you to narrow to a smaller pool later on through a semifinalist process. And then we come and facilitate then as well your final interviews. We provide lots of data about all the candidates for you. We also involve the community a great deal. And so we have mixed stakeholder groups. We have a community survey that we would like to do and gather information about what your needs are as a system. All that will flow together to help the candidates understand you and you understand the candidates in the best way that we can. There basically are 4 board meetings, if you will, and lots of behind-the-scenes work besides that. The first board meeting that we would have, if you choose us, I would come down and facilitate some time with you to talk through a community survey so that we get a very clear idea about what the community expectations are for you here. You would then take those data at the next meeting and consolidate that into some bullets that talk about what your needs are. You get a chance to be very, very much part of that process. We want the candidates to know you and you to know the candidates, plus we want the community to understand what your needs are and you to understand what the community's needs are. The first board meeting is very much about planning, and that would be as soon as we could make it happen. If you're meeting on the 13th, I will actually be out that week, but I could get stuff to you. We could start throwing stuff back and forth and moving the process forward. Once we identify a timeline in that meeting, we can start to nail down dates for candidate reviews, semifinals, and finalist interviews. We would do that at that planning meeting. Okay. In addition to the hiring dates, we would want to talk about things like what your salary range is, how you would want to look at gathering feedback from both the community through the survey and through interview teams, mixed interview teams, and I can talk about that a little bit later. We would want to talk about what kind of contract language you have in place now and whether you want to change any contract language for your incoming superintendent. And then we would be very specific about the kinds of recruitment that we want to get after. And I'll touch base about that a little bit here too. There are basically 9 or 10 questions that first meeting helps us to go through to best understand how to best recruit for the position. This is a proposed timeline for you, but it's really your decision about what kind of timeline you would want. We would suggest that what we found is one of the best times is right after the holiday. People like to kind of sit in their jobs and not rustle the feathers too much until mid-year. And then get it right after it, after mid-year is really the best time. It's the most active time, and we find we have the most applicants in January and February. Okay.
So based on that timeline, sorry to interrupt.
Pardon me?
Sorry to interrupt. Based on that timeline, when do you think we would complete and make an offer and hopefully have an accepted offer?
The goal would be January 26th to have somebody.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that finalist formal interview date, that last time that we meet, that would include interviews with the community, tours of the community, tours of the district. It would be your finalists at that point, so 3 or 4 people that you're comfortable with, that you want to get to know more about, and actually select from those 3 or 4 people. The semifinalist screenings are typically 5 to 8 people, and we found it very effective to do those via Zoom, especially if there are internal candidates applying for the positions. We try to level the playing field a bit. We used structured interview questions, both for the semifinalist screenings and for the formal interviews. But we suggest questions based upon your community survey about the kinds of things that you've told us are important for the community, and then you finalize those. You say, well, we really want to also, we're going to have a big building project, so let's ask something specific about a building project, and we would do those kinds of things too. So that's kind of the semifinalist screening. That's usually a one-night marathon board meeting, depending on how many semifinalists you want to look at. That candidate review meeting, I would present information about every single candidate that applied for the position. What we do every week, once the application opens, we send you the applicants that have submitted applications. So you get a chance to see and review all of the applicants as they apply. Then what we do on my end, what I do, is I take those and I summarize into one page the person's application, resume, confidential reference checks that we do, any possible red flags or highlights that we would want to talk about and make sure that you're aware of with candidates. And all of that is presented that week of the January 5th. Okay. That meeting typically is an hour and a half, 90 minutes. Really does depend on how many candidates you have. Part of that candidate review, also what we do as a team, is we take all the applicants and we put them into 3 groups for you. That doesn't mean really that you have to pick somebody out of a particular group, but we do that. We categorize them, if you will, green, yellow, red, or whatever colors we want to use. The top category would be they're fully qualified, they've got outstanding credentials, they've got outstanding references, they seem to have a great fit for what your community and you have said is important for you. Yellow means they've got some outstanding things in their background, but maybe they haven't been a superintendent yet, right? So it might be the best candidate, but we don't know yet because they haven't been one. Or great experiences, but all at systems that are not like you. So we don't know about fit. Or they don't have Kansas licensure, but they have Nebraska licensure, or they have Missouri licensure, or they have Iowa licensure. So we're confident they can get it, but we don't know yet, right? And then the red category typically is not a good fit, missing materials, incomplete applications, evidence that they're probably not a good candidate for you, right? So we don't spend a lot of time on the reds, we spend more time on the greens and yellows, and we have a facilitated conversation about all the candidates at that point. So this is just a proposed timeline. At that when we set that first meeting, we would actually set these dates, right? I talked about the stakeholder survey. What we found is, superintendents are, what gets them in trouble is when the community and the board and the superintendent all aren't in the same direction, right? They're not headed in the same way. And so having a mechanism to gather input from your community, whether it's a community survey like this or whether it's focus groups, we've done focus groups as well. They are more time consuming, but they're also very, very valuable. What we found with the community survey is that people give us great feedback. It's anonymous. It's an anonymous survey. It involves the community, both the school community and the community at large. We encourage students to participate and provide feedback as well in this community survey. What we will do is we'll compile all of that information and boil it down to what some of the important aspects, desired qualifications that your community is starting to tell us through the survey. We share that report with you, and you then decide, yep, that makes great sense. We want to look at these 8 things as qualities that we want in our next superintendent. We would then build all of our interview questions, whether they're screening interview questions or whether they're the finalist interview questions, on those qualities. So you're really uncovering things that your community has said is important. Another aspect of the stakeholder survey is we give them a chance to say, so what are you proud of in the district? And we compile that as well. Or if you could change one thing, what would it be? And you start getting some feel for what the issues are that both a new superintendent and you as a board need to have in your back pocket, need to understand how they flow together. And we include that stuff in the report. We ask them, what advice would you give the new superintendent? And that's very telling sometimes, right? We quote them in the report then, anonymously, and you get a chance to see them some real feedback about the district in light of that survey. Engaging the stakeholders really does provide credence to the process. It provides a sense of involvement even if they're not at the board meeting or in part of an interview team, as actually asking questions. They feel like when they look at that report, and we encourage you to make that report public, when they look at that report, they go, yeah, that makes sense. That looks like our district. Or, you know what, I said that. And they actually picked it up and put it in the report. So there's a real coming together of the community with this. Once we've got that planning meeting done, then we move out and we start looking at recruitment. Very powerful tools in the background to try to get you the best pool possible. And many of them are listed there. We found social media does, we get some folks from social media. We get people from some of the national bulletins that we use, the AASA job bulletin, K-12 job spot, etc. To give you an example, the first search at Lewis Central that we did, we had 3 finalists. One was from the St. Louis area. One was an associate superintendent in Las Vegas, and the other was a current Iowa superintendent. So it wasn't local. It really did pull a national pool. The last superintendent search that I did was at Hamburg and Essex, Iowa, 2 of the smallest school districts in Iowa. And we had candidates from Arizona, Alaska. One of the finalists was from Alaska, and the board chose to fly him in, and his wife, because they were so interested in him as a candidate. So it really does we do have a national pool. Trent, about how many folks are in our general pool overall? Do you know?
Yeah, we have about 3,300 principals and superintendents that we actively recruit from that have shown interest, in previous jobs. And I would also mention, just since I have the floor here for a second, that I think the other advantage, since we do so many churches in Missouri close, is that we can actively recruit, some great candidates from Missouri that are actually fairly close. So I really, on this timeline, if we set a good salary range with the reputation and things you have going right now, very confident we would have probably 20 plus candidates.
This slide just gives you a little bit of idea about the scope that we've been after. This is data from last year. We're average of 14 applicants per superintendent job. 38% of the internal candidates were hired. About a third, right, where there was an internal candidate, that person was hired. There were 6% out-of-state candidates hired. About a fourth of the candidates hired were female, and 90% of the feedback from the board was in the outstanding category. Most of our work is in Iowa. We do a tremendous amount of work in Missouri as well. Trent, about how many in Missouri did we do last year? Do you know?
Yeah, we did 12 superintendent searches in Missouri the last 2 years, and this year we actually have 9 going already. So everything seems to be a little bit earlier. And we average 21 in Iowa a year and 6 in Colorado a year.
This slide just helps you see kind of one of the communication mechanisms that we have in place. You'll receive weekly updates from us as candidates make application. So every Monday, one of the office staff puts together the candidates that have applied that most recent week, and so you get those new candidates. You get their resumes, cover letters, and the reference letters that are included in their application. And then once the application has closed, then part of our work behind the scenes, we put together those candidate narratives in the green, yellow, and red categories. We also put together a list of candidate disclosures. So if there was something that either in a background check, a social media check, a immigrant status check, a reference check that's confidential, because we ask for and seek reference checks that are confidential as well. If we see any red flags at all, they'll be part of a disclosure that you'll get. It won't be made public, it'll be something that you'll get as a board that will help you see at that candidate review meeting exactly what's going on behind the scenes, okay? And then that review session is where we do the reference summaries, the social media checks, the state licensure checks. It's a closed session where we review all the candidates.
Can you talk for a minute about closed searches versus open searches, what your preference is, what you would recommend, and the like?
Sure. Closed search can range from no community feedback, right? No community involvement, just the board. I personally have not done a search that has been completely closed. What typically I would recommend, and Trent can pitch in on this too, I recommend that it's closed until the finalists. Once you've picked the finalists, and we have mixed interview teams that include community people, it's going to get out in the community then. So until that point, I recommend that we remain closed. It's closed through all the process you've looked at so far. It's closed once you get to your semifinalist pool. Maybe you've got 5 and you want to narrow it to 3. That's still closed. The public doesn't know who those 5 are that you're looking at more deeply to pick the finalists. But once we get to the finalist stage, that's when I recommend that it become open so that you can include your community as part of that final set of interviews, right? Now it can happen through a press release that we would do, right? We would provide you a press release. It might say, you know, the Tonganoxie board has narrowed the the candidate, we describe the candidate pools a little bit, and then say we've narrowed to the top 3 finalists, and we give a short bio on each of those 3 finalists, then that could be released at that point to the paper. It could happen before that day of the interviews, but not until each of the finalist candidates have had a chance to talk with their local communities. We wouldn't want to do it before they've had a chance to say to their board, I'm a finalist at Tonganoxie, right? So that's what I've done typically with in fact, with all the searches that I've done, that's what we've done. We've been closed up until the point where the board has selected the candidates that they want to do final interviews with. And then we usually give a little bit of time there. We communicate with the finalist candidates and we say, we're going to have a press release on Friday. Is that okay with you? And we try to coordinate that so that they communicate with their people prior to it being opened. You have anything to add there, Trent?
Yeah, I would just weigh in and say it is getting more and more prominent for boards to run closed searches though, because of, the polarization and, with superintendents and the job, and, if you name 3 finalists publicly and 2 don't get the job, obviously they gotta go back to their district and maybe lose a little bit of credibility or energy for their initiative. So I will tell you there is a little bit of a trend for closed searches, especially districts about your size or larger. With your timeline, utilizing conferences, Thanksgiving, Christmas break, as Dave alluded to, I'm very confident you'll have a strong pool. If you do go closed, I can tell you with a little bit of confidence, you probably get a few more applicants, that are willing to take the risk and without their name being public. But the risk of that the board may get is some pushback from community and staff about why don't we know who those finalists are. And Dave and I don't know your district and community like you folks do. And so that's one thing you'll have to evaluate, right? Is a few extra candidates worth, a little less perceived transparency? And because that's really the burning question.
And you mean fully closed all the way through the finalists, correct?
Yeah, closed would mean that you'd only announce the superintendent that had an accepted contract offer at the end. Yeah, you wouldn't be announcing those, 2, 3, 4 finalists at that stage. Yeah. And what we try to do for you guys, if you go that route, is still set you up for success by, as Dave's alluded to, simply front-loading the process with getting the community, your staff, your administrative team more involved up front. So there's some trust and credibility built in what you're looking for. They've had a voice, and then the board has that privilege and responsibility to hear that. We'll help guide that, and then obviously making that decision based on the information that was gleaned at the beginning of the search rather than feedback at the end.
Does that help?
Yep, perfect, thank you.
This is just a slide that helps you see kind of what I alluded to earlier. When we take the candidates that have applied, that have submitted applications, and how we kind of analyze their application, their resume, their references, their confidential references, their licensure, their experiences, and we boil it down into some candidate summaries for you. We then present them in tiers like this. It doesn't mean that a person that's green or yellow isn't qualified. They're all probably qualified if they're yellow or green. But this will help sort them a little bit for you and might shorten your conversation a little bit. We've also moved people. There's been argument said, well, I found this thing out when I called my cousin who lives in that district, and that didn't come up, right? So I want them yellow. Great, not a problem. Or I know Andy, he should have been green. Okay, great. You know, this is just a starting point for the conversation for us. The summary report will include things like, what was their last salary? And I gotta tell you, here's an example. The candidate that we got from St. Louis for Lewis Central, he was already making $230,000. And that was on the sheet. And the board said, I don't know whether we're not gonna be able to go there, right? We're probably gonna be closer to 200 with this job. And that's great. But them knowing about it, I made a phone call to him. I said, hey, this is what I know. Where are you with your real salary requirements? And it was no problem for him. He says, I'm retiring in Missouri. You don't need to match any salary I've had before. I like what I see at Lewis Central, so therefore, you know, whatever you seem fair would be fine with me. And so they included him in the pool. He is actually the one that got the job. Eric Knost, great guy. But that idea of you'll know their current salary, you'll know their work experience, there'll be summaries about what some of the highlights from their application, the resume materials. You'll also see that we'll do a licensure check if they say, you know, well, I'm certified to be a principal in Kansas, but not a superintendent. But I'm here in my process, right? We'll make a phone call. We'll say, do you think he can get a conditional or she can get a conditional? And you'll know that kind of thing. We include that on the summary. We also try to get 5 or more confidential references. It's one thing to ask me to write a letter for you and include it in your packet of materials. In fact, if I write a letter for you, I'm going to include it copied to you too, so you know what I wrote. We need those, but we also need to talk to people confidentially. So we ask every single person that is on the candidates list to submit a confidential reference. We also reach out to other people. For example, I don't see a reference from your high school principal. I'm going to call the high school principal, and I'll ask him if they would do a confidential reference check right now for this candidate, and talk through, and I would actually collect that data and include that as a confidential reference too. We try to get at least 5. That all goes together to eliminate surprises. You want to know these people the best you can, right? Once we've got that candidate pool together, the application's closed, we've reviewed them, we narrow the field, right? If you have 20 people apply, you're not going to have 20 people interview. You're going to have, you have to have a narrower pool. The searches that I've done, not all of them, but most of them have had video interviews like this, where we say, well, here are the 5 people I want to know more about. Or maybe it's only the 3. You know, Hamburg and Essex, for example, didn't have a very large pool. They only had like 6 applicants. School district of 126 kids, very, very small. Sharing with another school district that's 40 miles away, right? A tough situation. They decided they wanted to do screening interviews even though there were only 3 of them, and even though they felt confident they want all of them as finalists because they wanted to know more about them. And so we've done that. I've also been in other searches where we've kind of skipped this whole thing. there's been consensus right away that here are the 3 or 4 people that we want to see. And so instead of doing screening interviews, Zoom-based screening interviews, we just go straight to setting up the finalist interviews with those 3 or 4 people. But it's really, the process is up to you. As you look at the candidate pool, you need to ask yourself, is there a real consensus that we've already narrowed, so we don't need to do this step? Or do we want to know more about these people so that we're more confident going into some finalist interviews with it? Okay? That screening interview, what we've typically done is a 30-minute Zoom session, 25 minutes, and 5 minutes. So 25 minutes of, or 25 minutes of questions, and then a chance for them to ask you some questions too at the end. 30 minutes is plenty of time. It's typically 10, 11, 12 questions at most. So you get a pretty good idea. Another thing we do with that screening interview is we plant 2 questions as homework for them. So we'll identify a couple of these questions as questions that we give to them before the interview. So it gives you a chance to say, oh, they're not just speaking off the cuff on this one, they've prepped, and now I see what prep looks like from this candidate, as opposed to just having to think off their feet. The majority of the questions are unknown to the candidate, but picking 1 or 2 of them gives you a different kind of insight into the candidates, and that's very helpful. We found that to be very helpful. Okay? On the finalist interviews day, if it's, I would suggest that we use mixed interview teams. I found a lot of success in that, involving the community as part of the mechanism. It's a very transparent process, but that really is up to you. If we go that route, what we do is we facilitate the sessions. We might have, in fact, here's a sample schedule of one. So there might be a tour first, and when the tour happens, and that has ranged from a transportation director, the former superintendent, a realtor in town. It really does depend your choice about who you want to give that tour. And we get feedback from them. We want to know, how'd that tour go from your perspective? What kind of impression did the candidate give you? And so we gather feedback from them as well, and we'll provide that at the end of the night for you. But this is just a short example. This is a real simple one. There have been times where we've had multiple cities, multiple towns, and so there'll be one interview group in this town, another interview group in this town, travel time built in, meals in there too, because it's just spread out too far. This is 3 candidates. We've had 4 candidates before. It just gets more complex. We facilitate those sessions if you choose to use interview teams. So I and Tony, and if we need a third, we can get a third consultant, would come in and not just coach a leader for that group, but we would actually facilitate the group. So we would go through a list of things like this, it says here are your responsibilities. You are not making the decision. The board makes the decision. You are not ranking the candidates. The board's responsibility is to pick the best candidate. You're providing very detailed feedback for the board to consider on each candidate. And that's our goal. We want them to really understand what their role is. Okay? So we facilitate those meetings. In this process also, once you have determined who your finalists are, we do background checks. The left-hand side of this is our responsibility. These are things that we do. We would make sure that we have off-list confidential references. We would support you in completing I-9 requirements, E-Verify requirements if you want, SAVE if that's important to you. SAVE is the immigrant and citizenship check if that's important to you. State licensure checks, social media checks, we use Ferretly to look back 7 years on their social media presence. And if there are any red flags, you get a copy of that report. In fact, you get a copy of the report anyway, even if there are no red flags, right? We ask them for their transcripts, so we verify their education. They say they got a doctorate from Morgan State University. I'll just use an example. It's a real example. And they didn't, then we'll uncover that, right? You know what example I'm talking about with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Federal civil rights records checks, federal sex offender registries. We do all those things. The things that you're responsible for are really about what your HR processes or your state requirements are. We can't do the I-9 for you. We're not the employer. You must do that, but we can support you and help if you need help doing that. You can do all the reference checks you want, right? So you can include extra things like that. In Iowa, for example, it's required that the district does a federal background check. Even though we just did one, it's required that upon employment, Iowa requires a federal background check. The governor of Iowa just today signed an executive order requiring E-Verify and SAVE as well. So there are requirements over here on the employer's side that we want to make sure that these things are taken care of for you, so there's no surprises, right? And we can support you and help as we can. Once you've gathered the data from the interviews on that finalist interview day, whether you use interview teams or whether it's closed and it's just the board, we do an analysis of those data. Here's an example. 3 candidates, mixed interview teams. We've got teachers, administrators, community members, grandparents, high school seniors. We've got 25 people in the room and 3 different rooms because, you know, they're going to see all these people. We take the data from them then because we do them at once. On the here you notice that the interview teams, in this case, the interview team has 3 different interviews. But you may want to know how the teachers felt as opposed to the administrators, or how the community at large felt as opposed to the school staff. And we have the ability to provide you those data. We ask them to rate on a Likert scale the person according to how they answered related to each of the qualifications that you determined through your community survey. So, for example, if honesty and transparency is a high thing, community says that's one of the big things we want out of our superintendent, we'll ask them, so how did their answers overall rate in terms of that? And then we give them narrative. We want them to type the things why they're answering it that way. Then what I do is I take those data and I crunch the numbers, but I also crunch the narratives. So I provide you then feedback on the candidate, both in terms of how they did bar chart wise there, that top one, as well as pulling from the narratives the narrative feedback that people type for us, what are the themes that came out? And it's amazing how this really helps us distill what's happening with that candidate. Great process. I think one of the differences that we have is that we facilitate those and we crunch that data in such a way that it really does help you understand the candidate even better. Okay. In addition to that, one of the things that we have all of our candidates do is the Advanced Insights profiles. It's a DISC profile and a Values and Attributes profile. It's about a 90-page, or it was about a 90-page report on the person's how they're really going to make decisions when they get into your midst. When they're under pressure, are you going to see the same thing from them that you saw in the interviews? And there's a lot of science behind this that helps us to determine whether or not they're just blowing smoke at us in the interview. I mean, I'm sure you've had instances where, boy, that person interviewed really well, but when they got here, we weren't sure it was the same person. What we found when we really look at the Advanced Insights reports, we start to really get a true glimpse about how this person actually acts, how they actually communicate through the forced choice mechanisms that the science behind these tools helps us to determine. We won't share these with you for anybody except the finalists, right? It's the finalists that we're trying to determine which to use. There's some great tools here for helping you communicate with the superintendent as well. And you can see that communication insight for others. And we've had superintendents who have taken that and shared that with their people. Said, this would help me. If you did these kinds of things, or if you avoided these kinds of things when you communicate with me, we'll understand each other better. And it's really been a helpful tool for people. Prior to the finalist interviews, we also have a pre-negotiations form that we use with all the candidates, finalists. This helps us to get a clear idea about just how committed they are to coming here. You see there's that family commitment thing there on that page. That is very telling sometimes. To give you a very real example, the superintendent that we hired at Essex and Hamburg in the Alaska finalist was offered the job. But his wife didn't want to come. The day before, their son had said, I want to stay here in Alaska. He had marked, yep, an 8 or a 9. We're really committed to moving back to the States. He had been in the lower 48, a couple of different places, and was really excited. He was excited about the job. If it had been his choice, he'd have taken it. Had he been a little bit more careful about how his wife really felt about the move, he'd have probably checked us 5 or 6. And we would have known that prior to going in. And I would have had a conversation with him prior to the board sending, flying them in to say, we don't want to waste people's time here. How serious really are you about this job? And it's very, very helpful. Another thing that comes out of this sometimes is, I really need family insurance, but the district doesn't provide family insurance, so it's a negotiations issue, right? Or you know, I've found it very helpful doing a national conference every other year. I want that as part of my package, right? There may be things like that. Those are uncovered here, and it gives us a chance then to talk about those things, because we really negotiate on your behalf, not on their behalf, on your behalf, to say, okay, yep, it's a candidate that they're committed to coming, but you know what? They really need family insurance. So is that a stumbling block, or is there something else we could do? So this pre-negotiations form we get from all the finalists, we have that in our back pocket, so that after you've done the finalist interviews and you've got all the feedback, we pull that out and we can start to talk about, are there any roadblocks here? You know, is there anything we need to worry about? So that's another part of our process. After the hire's done, our support doesn't stop. The stakeholder survey, I found it very helpful to share that with the incoming candidates. And they will very often then ask their questions that came out of that survey. You know, the new advice for the superintendent. Boy, we got a problem with, you know, fill in the blank. Or we got to do a better job with career ed, you know, or whatever the thing is that the community is out there talking about. They'll ask questions with you. They'll ask questions that will tailor them getting to know you better as a result of that survey. So that stakeholder survey, not only do we hand it to them saying, here's some advice for you as a new superintendent, but then it goes the other direction too. They use it then to ask us questions. In Iowa, we do an individualized onboarding workshop for new superintendents and their business managers. We actually have the business managers also do the Advanced Insights profile, and we would do that with you, I'm sure. This year, we're also inviting board presidents to that. And so it's a chance for a team of people to get to know each other better, to get some grounding in some fundamentals about leadership at the superintendent level with your school. I don't know how appropriate that is for you to be involved in the Iowa side, because we actually do Iowa Finance as one of the sessions, for example. So I don't know about that. But the next one is really important. The coaching and roundtables to the New Era Superintendent Association Partnership. That is a partnership, a national partnership that we've created, located in Utah. Is that right, Trent? The New Era.
Their headquarters is in Salt Lake City, or I'm sorry, Park City, Utah. Yeah. But they have members across the country, and our goal with that is to expose your new superintendent to a larger network and other national resources. And that's just a new partnership in the last year that has served a lot of superintendents well.
In addition to that, we offer a facilitated superintendent evaluation and reduced cost for that first year. It's a 360 superintendent evaluation. It provides feedback for the superintendent and for the board from all aspects, from the community, from the staff. We help to facilitate and gather those data and then crunch that data for you and provide that for you. And then we would have a consultant come in and help to facilitate that conversation between you and the superintendent. Okay, and so that's another option as well. We want the superintendent to be successful. We want you to be successful. And our goal really is to have the right fit and the right person for you for the long term, right? I know that Lauren's been here since 2017, is that right? Yeah. And so that's a great tenure for a superintendent. Wouldn't it be great if the next one stayed as long, right? Or even longer. I was at Lewis Central 26 years, and I guess what, my blood is blue, right? Yeah. Another difference for us is that we have a dedicated team that's going to support you. We're gonna do our absolute best to find the right fit for you. Also, there are no hidden costs with us. Trent has been true to this. The search proposal pricing is all inclusive. So if we have to have 5 meetings instead of 4, and I have to come down more often, then so be it. That's just included as part of the price.
On the dedicated consulting team, so is that you and Trent? Is it you plus somebody else? Who would that be?
It's going to be me and Tony Ellsworth,
Okay.
who is Trent. Where's Tony now? Is he at Pleasant?
Pleasantville. He's the superintendent. So Dave would be your lead. Tony would be what we call a field consultant. I do a lot of the recruiting behind the scenes, and then fill in as needed. Just because I get stretched so thin, I try not to put myself, as a lead on too many, because I want to be able to deliver. So we try to put a team behind us so we can meet when you want to meet.
So I would be your lead. I would be your main point of contact, right? And then if we would need an extra field consultant on the day of, like the finalist interviews, if we had too many, spread us too thin, we'd pull another team member. Right? Another thing that's Trent is very good about is providing a guarantee of our service. If for some reason the fit just isn't right, for 1 year from their contract date, if they leave, we're going to do a replacement search for you. That's kind of a big deal. Right. We haven't had to do this very often. We work hard to make the fit right. Right. Go ahead.
Dave, I got to weigh in here because I'm getting a little bit of a rash when you bring this slide up, but because we really do stick down. We hang our hat on fit, guys, and we mean that, and so we put our money where our mouth is. And if it's not a good fit, we're going to go back. We've only had, we've had this happen twice. Once was some charges that came up on a candidate post-hire. We went back mid-year, helped with an interim, and then did the search for no cost the following year. I will tell you, we've also done this where last year we had a candidate 1 year, went back to their alma mater, which was twice the size of the school district. And that truly was a career advancement. But we stuck behind this because, again, it wasn't a fit issue, but it was, left them in a lurch after a year. So we have not had to use this much, I want to reassure you. But if you put your trust and loyalty in us, I hope you see that we would build a partnership and give it back.
And again, if they leave in the second year for career advancement or board termination because of non-fit, it's right there. In fact, it's in writing in the formal proposal as well.
Very good. What questions?
I'm curious to know how much, you say you do a written community survey.
Mm-hmm.
How, percentage-wise, how is that responded to? Is it a high percentage of the community?
It
in your
really does
experience?
depend. I did one last year in George, Little Rock. George is a town in northwest Iowa. It's pretty small. George, Little Rock as a district has 2 towns and only has like 700 kids. Right, it's not very many kids. Their community involvement was tremendous. They had a great percentage. They sent it to everybody on their mailing list, right? They posted QR codes in the library and the grocery stores and everywhere that they could post it, local taverns, everywhere, said, we want your input. And they got it out there and people did it. It really does depend. What I found is the ones where the district is really emphasizing we want to get it out to people, it's higher. If it's, I forgot to send it, or you know, it went out, but I've got to be back on Monday. You know, too short of a window or too long of a window sometimes is equally a problem. So advertising it, getting it out there in places you wouldn't expect, making it convenient. We use a Google form to do this, and so you literally QR code, go to the form, you can type right in the form, you know, on a phone. It's very easy to do. So the districts that have been the most, that where it's an important thing for them, get the higher results. The two little districts that I last did in Iowa, hey, they only had like 50 people respond. You got to think about that. 50 people responded. They don't have 200, and they don't even have 200 kids between the two districts. 50 people was a pretty good sample for them. They felt confident too when they looked at the results that mimics what we've been talking about, what we find important, what we're talking about in the community about. So it was really good. You know, it's sort of like candidate pools too. You can have a candidate pool that's got 50 people apply for your job, or you can have 5 of the right people apply. Okay, so which is the better pool? If it's the 5 right people, that's really what you want. You don't want 50 of which I'm going to take 40 of them, scrape them off anyway. They're, you know, we're not interested in them. It's these few that really we care about. And so that's the same way with the community surveys. It's a lot like any other survey though too. If you let it sit too long, it gets stale, people don't do it. You need to get that media blast out, put it on social media, get it in the newsletters. At Lewis Central, when I did it there, we had parent-teacher conferences. Well, guess what? There were kiosks everywhere for parents when they came in. They're waiting for the conference for their kid, for this algebra teacher. Right here's a kiosk, they could fill it out right there. And our feedback was wonderful because of that, because we got it out there. We made it something that the community knew about it before it happened. And then once it happened, we put mechanisms in place to try to really get the feedback.
Dave, I would just add as well on that topic, 2 things. Number one, the survey that we do put out can be translated into over 50 different languages, and it is also mobile friendly. So when you talk about feedback, you know, we're also inclusive to, you know, getting diverse perspectives and making sure language is not a barrier. I was working with the Cameron, Missouri School District yesterday, and the other thing they're going to do is print copies and put printed copies in the chamber in the district office, and then we'll have people fill those out, return those, and scan them back to us, and we'll include those as well. So really, again, I hope you see we kind of front load the process and get feedback, as much feedback you can, because we're never beat up for too much feedback. So we can get that out there far and wide and produce a nice report for you. I'll say one more thing and then I'll be quiet as we finish up and field questions. But I hope you see in our presentation, you know, we get the weeds on some different things because it's important you understand our process. But, you know, 2 things that I hope you pull out from what we shared with you tonight. One is that we front load and try to help you identify fit. You know, what do you need in leadership fit at the beginning? And then Tony, Dave, and I would work hard to try to objectify the search process from there. We don't know Tonganoxie like you guys do, but we know the search process, recruit, and how to structure a quality hiring process for you. So we're going to guide you objectively to get to that fit that was front loaded. I hope you see that coming out of our presentation and our experience. And then the second thing I would just add is, you know, Dave talked about data and that objectivity from screening, information we get you to references, to collating the data from interview teams if you so choose to do an open search. and provide summaries of interview feedback to make the right decision. Sometimes we present our proven process to a board and they don't want that much data. And so we're not the firm for you. But if you like the objectivity, the data, informed decision-making, all aimed at the right fit, then, we hope we're a good partner search firm for you. And again, I just wanted to reiterate those couple key aspects of the search that we believe are best practice.
Very good. I've asked this question a couple times tonight, so my board peers may be tired of me asking it, but talk about how predictable we can be with what time you need from the board throughout the process. So we're all committed to spending the time. We know it's not a lightweight thing. We know it's important. We also do have day jobs, and so I think to the extent, that we can clearly plan those interactions, I think that helps. Obviously, you pulled up maybe the blue boxes are the interactions, but I think that's something that's probably important to us.
Yeah, these are the face-to-face times that we would want to nail down. The putting together that stakeholder survey, getting that out to people. If you're what we can do that remotely. We can pitch that back and forth, and you guys have a chance to provide feedback, and we can tweak the survey, make it what we want, to gather from folks. Once we get it then to you in its final form, then you can get it out to people, and that's really probably a function of your staff rather than you as a board, getting it out through your student information management system, for example, getting teams of people to plant it appropriately in the community, to get your social media teams involved, to, et cetera. So that's less about face-to-face time on the board's part. The planning meeting doesn't have to be very long. It can, much of that data can be collected also remotely. So for example, that would be, and I know this is like impossible to read, but this gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about here. It's nailing down those dates, putting those dates on a calendar. Would you like to use the survey or not? How do we manage that? What's your salary range? What your benefit package looks like? Looking at the contract that you have in place now, is there any changes you would want to make to that? We could help you think through all of that. That can be remotely done. This whole page, in fact, could probably be remotely done. If you were making a decision tonight, I could stay and we could do it in a half hour kind of thing, right? If it's important to be face-to-face to do these kinds of things, then I would plan to come down, spend half an hour with you.
And again, I think my question was much less about, if it's important to be face-to-face, we're glad to go do that. I think it's about the predictability of, 2 weeks from now on a Tuesday, we need to plan on that and, kind of to the extent possible, know that throughout the process. So.
Yeah, these once we settle on the dates, the last 3 boxes here are the important boxes.
Yep.
The candidate review is really a face-to-face meeting. And that could be at any time of the day or evening. It really does depend on your schedules and my schedule. That meeting would probably be just me. It probably wouldn't include Tony. We would invite Tony if he wants to come from Pleasantville. The semifinal screening is the same. It doesn't require 2 consultants to do that. So that would be just me. We would do that via Zoom. But I would be here with you. So it'd be the candidate via Zoom and the board at the table, taking notes, gathering feedback on the people. So that's a meeting, again, that's about a half hour per screening candidate. Okay, so if it's 5, that's 2.5 hours. Plus another half hour or so to debrief and say, okay, we're at 5, we need to be at 3, and having that facilitated conversation about that. So is 3 hours. If you want to do marathons, we can. Lewis Central had how many did Lewis Central have the first time, Trent? Was it 8 or 10?
Too many, Steve, kind of.
Yeah.
I think we streamed 9, I believe, the first time, and our general rule of thumb is 8 or less.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's Justin who asked that question. The point is, there won't be surprises, because we can't, work on surprises either, to be honest with you.
Yep.
And so once you set the date for that initial planning meeting for, candidate reviews, screening, and formal interviews, unless you get a blizzard or something, they're set.
Okay.
They're set, no surprises.
And in fact, what I've typically tried to do also is set some snow dates.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a snow date and not use it.
Yep.
Right? The finalist formal interviews is a longer day. As you saw, if it's 3 candidates, it could be something like this, but that really is up to you. This particular one started with the candidates at noon and ended with a board meeting closed session to hammer out who you wanted to in the end. So it could be an hour to 2 hour board meeting at 6:30, but you're needed on this kind of a schedule from 2:30 on that day. So that day is a long day for you.
Okay.
So really, we don't want any surprises in.
Yep.
The last 3 are really the ones where face to face is very important.
Okay. Other questions for Dave or Trent? Okay. Dave, appreciate you making the trip.
Absolutely.
Trent, thank you for dialing in. We're going to have a regular board meeting on Monday and hope to nail this down. So
Very good. I will be in southern Colorado on Monday.
good for you.
Trent will be able to get a hold of me.
Good for you.
Okay.
All right. Any general board discussion before we adjourn? All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.